You have been told to keep waiting for a clearer sign. They told you that when something is not meant for you, the answer will come loudly. They told you that one day the confusion will disappear by itself, the person will suddenly change, the situation will finally feel right, and your heart will stop hurting without you having to make a hard choice. But if that were true, why does your spirit feel tired every time you return to it? Why does your peace disappear the moment you think about staying? Why do you keep asking for signs when your body has already been giving you the answer through heaviness, anxiety, silence, and exhaustion? The truth is, you do not need more signs. You need the courage to release what is not at peace. You need the courage to stop calling pain a lesson when it has already taught you enough. You need the courage to stop begging confusion to become clarity, to stop asking what drains you to become gentle, and to stop holding on to something simply because you have already given it too much of your heart. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering grows when attachment becomes stronger than awareness. We suffer not only because something hurts us, but because we keep reaching for it after it has shown us its nature. We keep waiting for peace from the same place that keeps disturbing our mind. We keep mistaking hope for guidance, patience for self-abandonment, and fear of loss for love. Tonight, as you listen to these lessons, something inside you will begin to become still. The need for another sign will weaken. The fear of letting go will soften. The noise in your mind will start to lose its power. And slowly you will understand that peace is not always found in getting what you wanted. Sometimes peace begins when you finally stop forcing what was never at peace to stay in your life. This is not just a message about release. This is a return to your own soul. Are you ready? Let us begin. And now that you have heard the truth, that you do not need more signs but the courage to release what is not at peace, we must begin with the hidden place where most people get trapped. Because before anyone truly lets go, there is usually one quiet addiction they do not want to admit. It is not always an addiction to the person, the situation, the memory, or the dream. Sometimes it is an addiction to confirmation. The need to hear one more thing, see one more thing, feel one more thing, receive one more proof before finally doing what the soul already knows must be done. There is a strange pain in knowing the answer, but still asking for another sign. It is the pain of standing at the edge of freedom while your hands still reach backward for the chain that has become familiar. You are not confused because there is no answer. You are confused because the answer is asking you to become someone braver than you were yesterday. You tell yourself you are waiting for clarity, but sometimes what you are really waiting for is permission. Permission to walk away without guilt. Permission to stop hoping without feeling cruel. Permission to choose peace without explaining yourself to people who benefited from your silence. You say, "I just need one more sign." But life has already spoken through the heaviness in your chest, the tiredness in your spirit, the way your joy becomes smaller when you return to that place, and the way your inner peace disappears the moment you try to force it to work. This is where Buddhist wisdom becomes painfully honest. It teaches that suffering does not come only from losing what we love. Suffering also comes from refusing to release what has already stopped nourishing us. The Buddha spoke deeply about attachment, not because love is wrong, not because care is weakness, and not because the heart should become cold, but because the mind can turn anything into a prison when it clings. Even a beautiful memory can become a chain. Even hope can become a cage. Even patience can become self-harm when it is used to keep you tied to what keeps breaking your peace. The hidden addiction to confirmation begins quietly. At first it looks innocent. You say, "Let me wait and see." You say, "Maybe I am overthinking." You say, "Maybe this is just a difficult season." And sometimes patience is wise. Sometimes life does need space to unfold. Sometimes people do grow, situations do improve, and the storm does pass. But there is a difference between waiting with peace and waiting with a wounded nervous system. There is a difference between giving something time and giving it your soul. When you are truly being patient, there is still a quiet ground beneath you. You may not know everything, but you are not losing yourself. You can breathe. You can think clearly. You can sleep without feeling like your heart is sitting beside a locked door. But when you are addicted to confirmation, your waiting becomes restless. You check for meaning in every small action. You turn silence into a message. You turn distance into a test. You turn small kindness into proof that everything will change. You collect tiny moments of relief and use them to cover a mountain of pain. This is why letting go becomes hard. Not because you have no signs, but because you have trained yourself to trust the rare good moments more than the repeated harm. One kind word makes you forget weeks of confusion. One apology makes you ignore the same wound returning. One warm memory makes you question the cold pattern that keeps repeating. You are not looking at the whole truth anymore. You are looking for the pieces that allow you to stay. And the mind is clever. It knows how to defend what the heart is afraid to lose. It will create stories. It will say, maybe they are just hurt. It will say, maybe this is teaching me strength. It will say, maybe if I become softer, quieter, more patient, more understanding, more spiritual, then peace will finally come. But Buddhist wisdom asks a deeper question. Is your compassion helping you awaken, or is it helping you disappear? Is your patience coming from love, or is it coming from fear? Is your hope opening your heart, or is it keeping you trapped in suffering? Many people do not stay because something is peaceful. They stay because leaving would force them to grieve. And grief is honest. Grief does not let you hide behind signs. Grief makes you face the truth that something you loved may not be something you can keep. So instead of grieving, the mind starts searching. It searches for signs, messages, patterns, coincidences, dreams, repeated numbers, old promises, and small gestures. Not because all signs are meaningless, but because the wounded mind can turn anything into a reason to avoid release. You see their name somewhere, and suddenly you think it means you should hold on. You remember one beautiful moment, and you think it means the story is not over. You feel a wave of missing them, and you think it means they are meant to stay. But missing is not always guidance. Longing is not always truth. Familiar pain can feel spiritual when the heart is desperate for meaning. Sometimes the sign is not that you still care. The sign is that you keep losing yourself in the same place. This is one of the hardest lessons on the path of release. The heart can love what the soul has outgrown. You can care deeply and still know that staying is destroying your peace. You can wish someone well and still no longer give them access to your life. You can honor what something meant to you without forcing it to remain. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to hate what you release. It asks you to see clearly. And clear seeing is one of the most painful forms of freedom because it removes the excuses that helped you survive. The addiction to confirmation often comes from a deeper fear, the fear of being wrong. You do not want to leave and later regret it. You do not want to release and later discover that change was just around the corner. You do not want to close a door and then wonder if you gave up too soon. So you keep waiting for a sign so strong that it removes all doubt. But life rarely gives that kind of comfort. Most of the time, peace comes quietly. It does not shout. It does not beg. It simply waits for you to stop choosing what disturbs it. You may never receive a perfect ending. You may never get the apology that makes leaving easy. You may never hear the honest confession. You may never see the final proof that removes every question from your mind. And this is where courage begins. Courage is not moving only when all doubt disappears. Courage is moving when the truth has become clearer than your fear. Courage is saying, I may still feel pain, but I will no longer use pain as a reason to stay where I am not at peace. Sometimes the need for confirmation is really the need to avoid responsibility. As long as you are still waiting for a sign, you do not have to choose. As long as you say, "I am not sure yet," you do not have to face the discomfort of action. Waiting becomes a hiding place. Confusion becomes a blanket. You wrap yourself in uncertainty because certainty would demand change. But deep down, there is a quiet knowing that does not need drama. It does not need another betrayal, another disappointment, another sleepless night, or another collapse. It simply says, "This is not peace." That quiet knowing is easy to ignore because it does not fight for attention. Pain is loud. Fear is loud. Desire is loud. Attachment is loud. But wisdom is often soft. It appears in the body before it becomes language. It appears as tension when you say yes but mean no. It appears as tiredness after conversations that should have felt safe. It appears as a strange sadness after being around people who claim to love you. It appears as relief when plans are cancelled, distance is created, or silence gives you room to breathe. These are not small things. They are the body telling the truth the mind keeps negotiating with. Buddhist practice teaches mindfulness, and mindfulness is not just sitting quietly with closed eyes. Mindfulness is the ability to notice what is happening without immediately trying to decorate it with excuses. It is noticing, "I feel heavy here." It is noticing, "I become smaller around this person." It is noticing, "I keep abandoning myself to keep this connection alive." It is noticing, "My peace keeps leaving before I do." And when you notice these things again and again, you begin to understand that the sign you are waiting for may be the pattern you keep surviving. But addiction to confirmation does not end just because you notice it. It ends when you stop feeding it. Every time you return to what hurts you, just to check if it still hurts, you feed the addiction. Every time you ask people to explain what their actions have already revealed, you feed it. Every time you search for hidden meaning in someone's inconsistency, you feed it. Every time you treat your intuition like it is not enough, you feed it. And slowly, you teach yourself that your inner peace is not a valid witness. This is dangerous because when you stop trusting your own peace, you become dependent on outside proof. You need someone to behave badly enough before you feel allowed to leave. You need the situation to collapse completely before you feel justified. You need visible damage before you can accept invisible exhaustion. But not all wounds bleed where others can see. Some wounds are spiritual, some wounds are emotional. Some wounds happen each time you silence your own knowing to protect the story you wanted. And because there is no public evidence, you start doubting yourself. You say, "Maybe it is not that bad." You say, "Other people have worse." You say, "Maybe I should be grateful." But Buddhist wisdom does not measure suffering by comparison. It looks at the mind, it looks at the attachment, it looks at the loss of peace. If something repeatedly pulls you away from compassion for yourself, away from honesty, away from balance, away from stillness, then it deserves your attention. You do not need to prove that something is terrible before you are allowed to admit it is not peaceful. This is where many people stay trapped for years. They are waiting for the final sign, but they have already received hundreds of small ones. The body has spoken, the sleep has spoken, the tears have spoken, the anxiety has spoken, the way they keep explaining the same pain has spoken, the way their laughter feels forced has spoken, the way they feel more alone with someone than by themselves has spoken. But they keep saying, "I just need to be sure." The truth is, sometimes "I need to be sure" means, "I am not ready to lose what I hoped this would become." That hope is powerful. It can make you loyal to a future that does not exist. You are not only attached to what happened, you are attached to what you thought could happen. You are attached to the version of the person you saw in rare moments. You are attached to the life you pictured. You are attached to the healing you wanted, the apology you expected, the change you prayed for, and the peace you believed would come if you just held on long enough. So when Buddhist wisdom says release, it feels like it is asking you to let go of more than a person or situation. It feels like it is asking you to let go of an entire world you built inside your mind. That is why you keep asking for signs. You are not only asking, should I leave? You are asking, was my hope wasted? You are asking, did I give too much? You are asking, how do I accept that something I loved became something I must release? These are painful questions. They do not have easy answers, but they lead to freedom when you stop using them to stay stuck. Because even if your love was real, it does not mean the attachment is healthy. Even if the good moments were real, it does not mean the pattern is peaceful. Even if you gave from a pure place, it does not mean you must keep giving until there is nothing left of you. Buddhist wisdom teaches impermanence. Everything changes. People change, feelings change, seasons change, relationships change, dreams change, and even the version of you who once wanted something can change. But attachment wants to freeze life in one moment. It says, because this once made me happy, it must still be mine. It says, because I once felt peace here, I must fight until it returns. It says, because I loved this deeply, I must keep carrying it. But impermanence reminds you that honoring the past does not require betraying the present. There are things that were once blessings, but have now become burdens. There are connections that once opened your heart, but now close your spirit. There are dreams that once gave you direction, but now keep you from growing. There are places you once prayed to enter, and now your peace is asking you to leave. This does not make the past false. It means the season has changed. And one of the deepest forms of wisdom is knowing when a season has ended without needing it to turn ugly before you accept it. But the mind often wants ugliness because ugliness makes release easier. If someone betrays you in a dramatic way, leaving feels justified. If something completely falls apart, walking away feels obvious. If the pain becomes unbearable, you finally feel allowed to choose yourself. But what about when it is not dramatic? What about when it is just quietly draining you? What about when there are good days but not enough peace? What about when no one else understands why your soul feels tired? This is where true courage is needed. Anyone can leave a burning house. But it takes deep awareness to leave a beautiful room where you can no longer breathe. The hidden addiction to confirmation keeps you searching for a fire when the smoke has already filled your lungs. You want one final, undeniable reason. But peace does not always leave loudly. Sometimes it leaves slowly. It leaves through your appetite. It leaves through your sleep. It leaves through your creativity. It leaves through your patience. It leaves through the way you stop recognizing yourself. And by the time you finally admit the truth, you may realize you were not waiting for signs. You were waiting for the pain to become impossible to ignore. This is why you must become honest with the small disturbances. Do not wait until your soul is exhausted before you listen. Do not wait until resentment replaces love. Do not wait until your body starts carrying what your mouth refuses to say. Do not wait until the only version of you left is the one that knows how to survive. The path of wisdom is not only about enduring suffering, it is also about understanding when suffering is being prolonged by your refusal to release. There is a kind of spiritual maturity that does not need to be pushed to the edge before it chooses peace. It says, I have seen enough. Not with bitterness, not with hatred, not with drama, but with clarity. It says, I do not need this to destroy me before I believe it is not good for me. This is the maturity Buddhist wisdom points toward. A mind that can observe without clinging, a heart that can love without possessing, A spirit that can release without needing revenge. A person who can walk away before their softness turns into anger. You may ask, but what if I am wrong? And the answer is simple, but not easy. If you are choosing from fear, pause. If you are choosing from anger alone, breathe. If you are choosing from the need to punish, become still. But if you are choosing from repeated loss of peace, from deep inner knowing, from the quiet truth that staying is making you abandon yourself, then listen. Not every uncomfortable choice is a wrong choice. Sometimes discomfort is the price of returning to yourself. Letting go will not always feel peaceful at first. This is why many people mistake the pain of release for a sign that they should go back. They leave, then grief rises. They miss the person. They miss the habit. They miss the dream. They miss the old version of themselves who believed everything would work out. And because it hurts, they think, maybe this pain means I made the wrong decision. But pain after release does not always mean you should return. Sometimes it means the attachment is detoxing from your spirit. You can crave what harmed you. You can miss what drained you. You can cry over what you know you cannot keep. This does not mean the thing was peaceful. It means your heart is human. The mind becomes used to patterns, even painful ones. When those patterns are removed, there is space, and space can feel frightening at first. The silence after chaos can feel empty before it feels calm. The first days of freedom can feel like loneliness because you have not yet learned how to rest in your own presence again. This is why confirmation addiction is so tempting. It gives you something to do. Instead of grieving, you analyze. Instead of releasing, you search. Instead of feeling the emptiness, you return to the question, what if becomes a place to hide? Maybe one day becomes a sedative. I need another sign becomes the rope tying you to the same suffering. But healing begins when you stop using questions to avoid the answer. The answer may not be what you wanted, but it can still be sacred. It may hurt, but it can still free you. It may close a door, but it can still return your breath. Buddhist wisdom does not promise that right action will always feel easy. It teaches that right action often requires letting go of craving, illusion, and the false comfort of familiar pain. It asks you to stop worshipping what disturbs you simply because you once believed it would complete you. There is something powerful that happens when you stop asking the world to confirm what your soul already knows. You become less available for confusion. You stop negotiating with patterns. You stop treating peace like it is too small to be evidence. You stop needing others to agree before you honor your inner life. You begin to understand that your peace is not a weak reason. It is one of the clearest forms of truth you have. And when peace becomes your evidence, your choices change. You no longer chase what only gives you intensity. You no longer confuse emotional highs with spiritual alignment. You no longer mistake anxiety for passion. You no longer call inconsistency mysterious. You no longer call waiting loyalty when waiting is slowly making you bitter. You begin to see that the soul does not need constant chaos to feel alive. The soul needs safety, honesty, balance, kindness, and room to breathe. This does not mean you will never struggle again. It does not mean you will never doubt. It does not mean release will happen without tears, but it means your doubts will no longer be stronger than your awareness. It means your fear will no longer be the leader of your life. It means you can feel sadness and still choose peace. You can feel love and still choose distance. You can feel grief and still not return. This is the hidden freedom behind letting go. You stop waiting for the final sign because you become loyal to the truth already living inside you. You stop asking pain to explain itself again and again. You stop needing what hurt you to admit that it hurt you. You stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to leave the fire. You stop forcing your spirit to keep proving what it already knows. And maybe that is the real beginning of Buddhist courage. Not the courage to become cold, not the courage to stop caring, not the courage to pretend nothing matters, but the courage to care without clinging, to love without losing yourself, to grieve without going back, and to honor peace even when attachment still has a voice. So if you have been asking for another sign, become quiet for a moment. Not to search outside yourself, but to hear what has been speaking inside you. Ask yourself what happens to your body when you think of staying. Ask yourself what part of you keeps shrinking to make room for something that does not bring peace. Ask yourself whether you are waiting for clarity or waiting for the courage to obey the clarity you already have. Because sometimes the sign is not coming in a new message, it is not coming in a dream, it is not coming through another person, it is not hidden in a coincidence. Sometimes the sign is the absence of peace. Sometimes the sign is the exhaustion you keep explaining away. Sometimes the sign is the quiet relief you feel when you stop reaching for what keeps hurting you. You do not need more signs. You need to stop abandoning the sign that has been living in your own body. You need to stop asking the mind to approve what the soul already knows. You need to stop delaying your freedom because you are afraid of the grief that comes with it. And when you finally understand this, letting go will no longer feel like losing. It will feel like returning to your breath, returning to your dignity, returning to your stillness, returning to the part of you that existed before attachment taught you to confuse suffering with love. This is where release begins. Not with a loud announcement, not with a perfect ending, not with everyone understanding, but with one honest moment where you say, I have seen enough. I choose peace now. And once that choice is made, the next lesson becomes even deeper, because the signs you ignored were not only in your thoughts, they were in your body long before your mind was willing to accept them. And once you begin to listen to the body, once you stop dismissing the heaviness, the tightness, the tiredness, and the quiet relief that comes when you step away from what drains you, another truth begins to rise. It is a truth many people avoid because it touches the image they have built of themselves. You may have called yourself patient, loyal, forgiving, understanding, and strong, but somewhere along the way, patience may have stopped being wisdom and slowly became self-abandonment. There is a kind of waiting that protects love, and there is a kind of waiting that destroys the person who waits. There is a kind of patience that gives life room to breathe, and there is a kind of patience that teaches your soul to survive without being cared for. And the hardest part is that both can look the same from the outside, both can look calm, both can look mature, both can look spiritual. But inside, one brings peace, while the other slowly empties you. You were taught that patience is a virtue. You were told that good people wait, kind people forgive, strong people endure, and spiritual people do not give up easily. And yes, patience can be beautiful. Patience can save relationships from temporary storms. Patience can help you grow through difficult seasons. Patience can soften anger, deepen understanding, and give time for truth to unfold. But Buddhist wisdom does not praise blind endurance. It does not ask you to stay asleep inside suffering and call it holiness. It asks you to see clearly. Patience becomes dangerous when it is used to silence the truth. It becomes dangerous when you keep saying, I am being patient. But what you really mean is, I am afraid to choose myself. It becomes dangerous when you keep giving time to what keeps taking your peace. It becomes dangerous when your waiting no longer comes from love, but from fear, guilt, attachment, or the belief that your needs are too heavy for others to respect. Real patience has dignity. Self-abandonment has anxiety. Real patience has boundaries. Self-abandonment keeps moving the boundary every time someone crosses it. Real patience allows room for growth. Self-abandonment makes excuses for repeated harm. Real patience keeps you connected to yourself. Self-abandonment asks you to leave yourself so someone else can remain comfortable. This is where many people get trapped. They think leaving means they were not patient enough. They think choosing peace means they failed. They think releasing what drains them means they are selfish. But sometimes the most patient thing you can do is stop feeding a cycle that has no intention of changing. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is stop allowing your kindness to become a hiding place for someone else's immaturity. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is admit, I have waited with love, but I will not wait until I disappear. Buddhist wisdom teaches the middle path, not extreme attachment, not extreme rejection, not clinging, not hatred, not coldness, not blind sacrifice. The middle path asks for balance, and balance means your compassion must include you, your patience must include you, your forgiveness must include you, your love must include you. If your patience gives everyone room except your own soul, then it is no longer patience. It is self-erasure dressed in gentle language. Many people do not notice when patience turns into self-abandonment because it happens slowly. At first, you forgive one thing because everyone makes mistakes. Then you forgive another thing because you believe in growth. Then another thing because you do not want conflict. Then another thing because you have already invested too much. Then another thing because you are afraid of starting again. Before long, you are no longer choosing patience. You are trapped in a pattern where your peace is always postponed. You begin to tell yourself, maybe tomorrow will be better. Then tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next month. Next month becomes years of waiting for the same pain to transform into safety. You start living on small promises. You feed yourself with little moments of hope. You survive on apologies that sound good, but do not change behavior. You keep watering a field that gives you no harvest. And when your hands become tired, you blame yourself for not being strong enough. But wisdom asks, what are you waiting for, and what is your waiting costing you? This question is simple, but it can open a locked room inside the heart. Are you waiting for real change, or are you waiting for your fear to stop being afraid? Are you giving someone time to grow, or are you giving them permission to keep hurting you? Are you being patient with a process, or are you postponing the grief of acceptance? Are you honoring love, or are you betraying your own peace so the story does not have to end? There is a difference between waiting with awareness and waiting in denial. Waiting with awareness means you can see the truth clearly. You know what is happening. You know what you need. You know what your limit is. You are not asleep. You are not pretending. You are not giving endless chances without watching the pattern. But waiting in denial means you are using time as a drug. You are hoping time will do the work that courage is asking you to do. You are hoping the future will rescue you from a decision your present self is afraid to make. Patience is wise when there is movement. Self-abandonment begins when there is only repetition. If someone is truly growing, you can feel the difference, not because they speak beautifully, but because their actions begin to carry responsibility. Not because they promise change, but because they stop making you beg for basic care. Not because every problem disappears, but because honesty enters the space. Repair becomes real, respect becomes visible, effort becomes consistent. Peace becomes more possible. But when the same wound keeps returning in different clothes, you must pay attention. When every apology leads back to the same behavior, you must pay attention. When every conversation gives you hope but no change, you must pay attention. When you keep explaining the same pain to someone who knows exactly what they are doing, you must pay attention. Patience is not meant to make you blind. It is meant to keep you steady while reality reveals itself. Many people confuse potential with proof. They see what someone could become and treat it as if it is already real. They see a small glimpse of kindness and build a whole future around it. They see one soft moment and use it to excuse a long season of emotional unrest. But Buddhist wisdom brings you back to what is present, not what might happen, not what you hope will happen, not what someone could be if they healed, changed, matured, or awakened. What is here now? What is being practiced now? What is your life becoming now because you keep waiting? Potential can become one of the most painful attachments. You do not stay with what is, you stay with what could be. You do not love the pattern, you love the possibility. You do not trust the reality, you trust the dream. And because the dream is beautiful, you keep sacrificing your peace to protect it. But a dream that requires you to abandon yourself is not guidance, it is craving. It is the mind refusing to accept that something beautiful in your imagination may not be healthy in your life. True patience does not require you to betray your body. It does not ask you to ignore your exhaustion, swallow your truth, or live in constant uncertainty. It does not punish you for having needs. It does not make you feel guilty for wanting respect. It does not make peace feel like too much to ask. If your patience keeps demanding that you become smaller, quieter, less honest, less joyful, and less alive, then something has gone wrong. This is where the body lesson returns. Your body may already know when patience has become self-abandonment. It knows when your waiting is no longer peaceful. It knows when your forgiveness is forced. It knows when your silence is not wisdom, but fear. It knows when your kindness has become a mask. You may tell yourself, "I am fine," but the body keeps saying, "You are tired." You may tell yourself, "I can handle it," but the body keeps saying, "You should not have to keep handling this." You may tell yourself, "This is love," but the body keeps asking, "Then why does it feel like losing yourself?" Self-abandonment often hides behind noble words. I am being understanding. I am giving grace. I am choosing peace. I am being mature. But sometimes what you call understanding is fear of confrontation. What you call grace is fear of loss. What you call peace is silence that protects the wrong thing. What you call maturity is exhaustion that no longer has the energy to ask for more. This is why wisdom requires honesty. Without honesty, even beautiful words can become cages. Buddhist wisdom teaches compassion, but compassion is not the same as allowing harm. Compassion sees the suffering in another person, but it does not hand them the right to create suffering in you. Compassion can understand why someone acts from pain, but it does not pretend their pain gives them permission to keep disturbing your peace. Compassion can wish someone healing from a distance. It does not always require access. It does not always require closeness. It does not always require staying. This is hard for people who have built their identity around being good. If you have always been the one who understands, the one who forgives, the one who stays calm, the one who gives more, the one who carries the emotional weight, then choosing yourself can feel like becoming cruel. But you are not cruel for wanting peace. You are not cruel for having limits. You are not cruel for saying, "I cannot keep paying for this connection with my own inner stability." You are not cruel for refusing to turn your life into a waiting room for someone else's awakening. There is a hidden pride in endless patience that many people do not want to see. Sometimes we stay because we want to be the one who loved enough to change everything. We want our sacrifice to be the reason someone becomes better. We want to believe our loyalty is powerful enough to transform what time, truth, and pain have not transformed. This is not always love. Sometimes it is the ego wanting to be special. It wants to say, "I was the one who stayed. I was the one who saved it. I was the one who proved love can endure anything." But Buddhist wisdom gently removes the ego from love. It reminds you that you are not here to control another person's awakening. You are not here to suffer someone into maturity. You are not here to become a bridge that others walk across while you break beneath them. You can plant kindness, you can offer truth, you can give space, you can forgive, but you cannot force another person to meet peace with you. And when you keep trying, your patience becomes attachment to an outcome. This attachment is painful because it makes you responsible for what is not yours. You begin to measure your worth by whether the situation changes. If they improve, you feel valuable. If they do not, you feel like you failed. But another person's refusal to grow is not proof that your love was weak. A situation remaining unhealthy is not proof that you were not patient enough. Sometimes you gave enough. Sometimes you gave too much. Sometimes the lesson is not to try harder. The lesson is to stop trying to become the only person holding together what needs honesty from both sides. Patience becomes self-abandonment when the relationship between giving and receiving disappears. You are always the one calming yourself, always the one explaining, always the one adjusting, always the one forgiving, always the one waiting, always the one trying to understand the other side. But who is understanding you? Who is asking how long you have been tired? Who is noticing what this is doing to your spirit? Who is making room for your pain without turning it into an inconvenience? A connection that only survives when one person keeps disappearing is not balanced. It may continue, but it is not peaceful. It may look stable, but it is being held together by one person's self-denial. And this is why some people feel lonely, even when they are not alone. They are present in a relationship, family, friendship, job, or dream, but absent from themselves. They have made so much room for others that there is no room left for their own breath. To be patient without abandoning yourself, you must know your limits before you reach resentment. Resentment is often a late message from a boundary that was ignored too many times. At first, you were kind, then you became tired, then you became irritated, then you became cold. Then you began to judge yourself for not being as loving as before. But maybe your love did not disappear. Maybe it was buried under too many moments where you said yes while your soul was saying no. This is why boundaries are not the enemy of patience. Boundaries protect patience from turning into bitterness. When you have boundaries, your kindness can stay clean. Your forgiveness can stay honest. Your waiting can stay awake. You are not giving endlessly and secretly hoping someone notices your suffering. You are communicating clearly. You are honoring what you can give and what you cannot. You are allowing people to meet you with respect, not expecting them to guess where your pain begins. Some people avoid boundaries because they fear boundaries will push others away. But the truth is, boundaries do not destroy real love. They reveal the quality of it. When you set a healthy boundary, some people will respect it, even if it is uncomfortable. Others will become angry because your lack of boundaries was part of what benefited them. This is painful to see, but it is also freeing. You learn who loved your presence and who loved your availability. You learn who wanted your heart and who wanted your compliance. You learn who can meet your truth and who only liked you when your needs were silent. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that attachment often fears truth because truth changes things. But peace needs truth. You cannot build peace on swallowed pain. You cannot build harmony by pretending. You cannot build love by being the only person who keeps adjusting. If a connection cannot survive your honesty, it was already surviving on your self-abandonment. If a situation falls apart when you stop betraying yourself, then what fell apart was not peace. It was imbalance. There is a moment when patience becomes a mirror. It asks, are you waiting because love is still alive here, or because you do not know who you are without this? This question can feel frightening because many people confuse attachment with identity. They have been patient for so long that they do not know how to stop waiting. They have organized their life around the possibility of change. They have built meaning around endurance. To release the waiting feels like losing a part of themselves. But you are not only the one who waits. You are not only the one who understands. You are not only the one who stays. You are also the one who deserves rest. You are the one who deserves kindness without begging. You are the one who deserves peace without earning it through suffering. You are the one who deserves to wake up without carrying the same emotional burden. The self you are afraid of losing may actually be the wounded role you were never meant to keep. Self-abandonment can feel familiar because it gives you a sense of purpose. When you are always fixing, waiting, forgiving, and managing pain, you feel needed, you feel important, you feel like your suffering has meaning. But needing to be needed can become another form of bondage. It keeps you tied to places where your worth depends on how much you can carry. Buddhist wisdom asks you to release even the identity of being the one who endures. It asks you to discover who you are when you no longer have to prove your love through suffering. This is not easy, because peace can feel unfamiliar to those who have lived through emotional struggle for too long. If you are used to earning love through patience, receiving simple love may feel strange. If you are used to chasing clarity, calmness may feel quiet. If you are used to being the strong one, rest may feel undeserved. But peace does not become false because it feels unfamiliar. Sometimes, unfamiliar peace is exactly what healing feels like before the soul learns to trust it. To know the difference between patience and self-abandonment, look at what the waiting is doing to you. Is it making you wiser, softer, more grounded, more honest, more compassionate toward yourself and others? Or is it making you anxious, resentful, tired, suspicious, disconnected, and afraid to speak? Is your patience rooted in present truth, or is it fed by future fantasy? Does the waiting bring you closer to yourself, or does it require you to become someone you barely recognize? Real patience has a living quality. It breathes. It can speak. It can say, "I love you, but this is not okay." It can say, "I understand, but I also have needs." It can say, "I am willing to give time, but I will not give myself away." It can say, "I forgive, but I am watching the pattern." Self-abandonment cannot speak clearly. It swallows. It hides. It explains away pain. It fears being too much. It hopes silence will be rewarded. It thinks love means staying available, even when the soul is begging for space. The tragedy is that many people who abandon themselves are not weak. They are deeply loving. They have large hearts. They see the good in others. They believe in healing. They want to be fair. They know people are complicated. They understand pain. But when love is not guided by wisdom, it can become a path into suffering. This is why Buddhist wisdom does not separate compassion from awareness. Compassion without awareness becomes self-sacrifice. Awareness without compassion becomes hardness. Together, they create balanced love. Balanced love can stay when staying is healthy. Balanced love can leave when leaving is necessary. Balanced love can forgive without returning. Balanced love can care without carrying. Balanced love can say, "I wish you peace, but I will not lose mine to give you yours." This is not selfish. This is the end of confusion. This is the point where love stops being a performance and becomes honest. There is also the patience you owe yourself. Many people are endlessly patient with others, but cruel to their own healing. They give others years to change, but give themselves no time to grieve. They allow others to make mistakes, but punish themselves for feeling hurt. They understand everyone else's wounds, but judge their own needs as weakness. This is another form of self-abandonment. You are patient outwardly, but harsh inwardly. You hold space for everyone except the person living inside your own body. Buddhist wisdom invites you to bring compassion back home. Be patient with the part of you that is still attached. Be patient with the part of you that is afraid to let go. Be patient with the grief that comes in waves. Be patient with the healing that does not move in a straight line. But do not use patience with yourself as an excuse to return to what you know is not peaceful. There is a difference between being gentle with your process and betraying your clarity. Sometimes, after you choose peace, guilt will rise. Guilt may say, you should have waited longer. Guilt may say, you are being unfair. Guilt may say, what if they needed you? But guilt is not always wisdom. Sometimes guilt is just the echo of an old role. It is the voice of the version of you who believed love meant carrying everything. You can hear guilt without obeying it. You can thank it for trying to protect you from regret and still move forward. You may also feel sadness for the people or situations you can no longer keep close. This sadness does not mean your boundary is wrong. It means your heart is alive. You can miss someone and still know that the way things were was not peaceful. You can cry over a decision and still know it was necessary. You can feel compassion for someone and still refuse to be the place where their unhealed patterns keep landing. Maturity is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to honor emotion without letting it drag you back into suffering. The difference between patience and self-abandonment becomes clearer when you stop asking, "How much more can I take?" and start asking, "What kind of person am I becoming while I keep taking this?" That is the deeper question. Are you becoming more truthful, more peaceful, more open, more alive? Or are you becoming guarded, bitter, tired, and afraid of your own needs? Some things do not break you all at once. They train you to live beneath your own spirit. And because the change happens slowly, you may not notice the loss of yourself until someone asks what you want and you no longer know. You may not notice until silence feels safer than honesty. You may not notice until you stop expecting care and start calling neglect normal. You may not notice until peace feels like something other people receive while you keep surviving. But the moment you notice, awareness has begun. And awareness gives you a choice. You do not have to make a dramatic announcement. You do not have to convince everyone. You do not have to list every reason. Sometimes the first step is simply admitting the truth to yourself. This waiting is hurting me. This patience is no longer peaceful. This situation is asking me to abandon too much. I have confused endurance with love. That admission may feel small, but it is powerful. It is the moment the self you abandoned begins to return. From there, courage grows. You may begin with a boundary. You may begin with an honest conversation. You may begin with distance. You may begin with rest. You may begin by no longer chasing explanations. You may begin by no longer offering access to people who treat your peace like a small thing. The form may differ, but the essence is the same. You stop leaving yourself behind. And when you stop leaving yourself behind, life may become quieter. Some people may not understand the new you. Some may miss the version of you who was always available. Some may call your peace selfish because your old suffering was useful to them. Let them misunderstand. Not with anger, not with pride, but with calm. You are not here to keep proving your goodness by how much pain you can accept. You are here to awaken. This awakening does not make you less loving. It makes your love more truthful. It teaches you that patience is not endless waiting. Patience is wise presence. It teaches you that forgiveness is not repeated access. Forgiveness is freedom from hatred. It teaches you that compassion is not self-erasure. Compassion is kindness guided by clarity. It teaches you that peace is not passivity. Peace is the courage to stop cooperating with what keeps disturbing your spirit. So, when you ask whether you are being patient or abandoning yourself, do not only listen to the story in your mind. Watch the pattern, feel the body, notice the cost, look at the fruit. True patience eventually produces understanding, repair, maturity, or peace. Self-abandonment produces exhaustion, resentment, confusion, and distance from your own soul. One helps love become wiser, the other helps suffering continue. And if you discover that what you called patience was really self-abandonment, do not shame yourself. Shame will only pull you deeper into the same pattern. Meet yourself with tenderness. You were trying to love, you were trying to hope, you were trying to believe in what could be healed. But now you know that love without self-respect becomes a quiet form of suffering. Now you know that peace matters. Now you know that waiting is not sacred when it requires you to disappear. The courage to release begins here, not in anger, not in revenge, not in closing the heart. It begins in the quiet decision to stop confusing your disappearance with devotion. It begins when you say, I can be kind and still have limits. I can be patient and still choose myself. I can love and still leave. I can forgive and still not return. I can understand someone's pain and still refuse to live inside it. This is the clean line between patience and self-abandonment. Patience says, I will give this room to grow, but I will remain present to myself. Self-abandonment says, I will lose myself so this can continue. Patience says, I will wait with awareness. Self-abandonment says, I will wait because I am afraid to face the truth. Patience says, peace must still live here. Self-abandonment says, maybe peace will come after I suffer enough. But peace does not ask you to suffer enough to deserve it. Peace asks you to stop betraying the place within you where truth has been speaking. It asks you to stop praising the version of you that can endure everything and start protecting the version of you that deserves gentleness. It asks you to stop mistaking your ability to survive for a sign that you should stay. And when this becomes clear, something shifts. You no longer ask, how long should I keep waiting? You ask, is this waiting still aligned with peace? You no longer ask, would leaving make me a bad person? You ask, what am I becoming if I keep staying? You no longer ask, can I handle more? You ask, why do I keep accepting a life I have to handle instead of a life where my soul can breathe? That is where wisdom begins to mature. That is where release becomes less about losing something and more about recovering yourself. And once you recover even a small part of yourself, you begin to understand the next truth. Peace is not always loud, thrilling, or dramatic. Sometimes peace is quiet. Sometimes peace feels less exciting than the chaos you are used to. But that quietness may be the strongest sign you have been searching for all along. And once you begin to see that patience is not holy when it asks you to disappear, another truth starts to become clear. The thing you were calling love, destiny, passion, or spiritual connection may have only felt powerful because it kept your emotions awake. It kept you guessing. It kept you hoping. It kept you afraid to lose. It kept your mind moving in circles. But peace, real peace, does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes peace comes quietly, and because it does not shake you, you almost miss it. There is a kind of excitement that feels like life, but slowly takes you away from yourself. It rises fast, fills your chest, makes your thoughts race, and gives you the feeling that something important is happening. But not everything that feels intense is meaningful. Not everything that makes your heart beat faster is good for your soul. Sometimes the nervous system calls chaos chemistry. Sometimes the mind calls uncertainty mystery. Sometimes the heart calls anxiety love because calmness feels too unfamiliar to trust. This is why peace is a stronger sign than excitement. Excitement may pull you toward something, but peace tells you whether your spirit can rest there. Excitement can be created by desire, fear, novelty, attention, and uncertainty. Peace cannot be faked for long. Peace is deeper. Peace is quieter. Peace does not need to impress you. Peace does not need to keep you addicted. Peace does not need to make you chase. It simply lets you breathe. Many people do not trust peace because they have been trained to follow intensity. They think something must be right if it feels powerful. They think a connection must be deep if it consumes their thoughts. They think a dream must be meant for them if it keeps them restless. They think a person must matter if losing them feels unbearable. But Buddhist wisdom does not ask, how intense is this? It asks, does this reduce suffering or does it increase it? It asks, does this bring clarity, compassion, balance, and freedom, or does it create craving, fear, confusion, and attachment? That question changes everything, because once you stop worshipping excitement, you begin to notice what it has been costing you. You notice that the thing that thrills you may also destabilize you. You notice that the person who gives you butterflies may also take away your sleep. You notice that the situation that feels exciting may also make you lose your center. You notice that some doors open with energy, but not with peace. And when there is no peace, the soul cannot stay whole. Excitement is not evil. Joy is not wrong. Feeling alive is not a mistake. Buddhist wisdom is not asking you to become empty, dull, or detached from beauty. It is asking you to become honest. There is clean excitement, and there is disturbed excitement. Clean excitement feels open. It carries lightness. It does not make you abandon your dignity. It does not require you to betray your body. It does not make you anxious for proof. It can dance with peace. But disturbed excitement feels urgent. It makes you grip. It makes you fear silence. It makes you chase signs. It makes you mistake emotional hunger for spiritual guidance. This is where many people confuse passion with suffering. They say, I have never felt this way before, but they do not ask whether the feeling is bringing them home to themselves or pulling them out of themselves. They say, this feels so strong, but they do not ask whether strength and peace are walking together. They say, I cannot stop thinking about it, but they do not ask whether that is love or mental captivity. Not every thought that repeats itself is wisdom. Sometimes repetition is the mind trying to solve what the soul already knows is not safe. Peace, on the other hand, may feel too simple at first. It may not give you the rush you are used to. It may not create a dramatic story. It may not make you check your phone every 5 minutes. It may not make you chase, prove, beg, compare, or fear. It may just feel steady. And if you have been living on emotional storms for a long time, steadiness can feel almost disappointing. You may wonder, is this real? Is this enough? Shouldn't I feel more? But sometimes the absence of panic is the sign. Sometimes the absence of confusion is the blessing. Sometimes the absence of a constant inner battle is exactly what your life has been asking for. Peace is not always loud because peace does not need to convince you. It does not perform. It does not seduce. It does not create drama so you can feel its importance. Peace is like clear water. It does not shout, yet it reveals everything. When something is peaceful, you do not have to keep explaining why it hurts. You do not have to keep asking where you stand. You do not have to keep shrinking your needs. You do not have to keep translating inconsistency into hope. You do not have to keep betraying your own knowing just to keep the story alive. This is why peace is stronger than excitement. Excitement can blind you. Peace helps you see. Excitement can make you ignore red flags because the feeling is so powerful. Peace gives you enough stillness to notice the truth. Excitement can make you attach quickly. Peace gives your heart space to choose with wisdom. Excitement asks, do I want this? Peace asks, can my soul breathe here? And the second question is the one that saves you from repeating suffering. Some people spend years chasing what excites them, then wonder why they are never settled. They move from one emotional peak to another, one intense connection to another, one dramatic hope to another, always searching for the feeling that makes them feel alive. But they do not notice that they are not building a peaceful life. They are building a life around stimulation. They become dependent on the rush of uncertainty. They feel bored when something is steady. They feel uneasy when someone is consistent. They feel suspicious when love does not hurt. And because peace does not create a storm, they think it is too plain to be sacred. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that the deepest things are often simple. Breath is simple, yet without it, nothing continues. Stillness is simple, yet it reveals the mind. Compassion is simple, yet it changes how we live. A peaceful heart is simple, yet many spend their whole lives searching for it. The mind that craves excitement often misses the quiet gifts because it is looking for something dramatic enough to distract it from itself. When you are not at peace within, excitement can feel like medicine. It gives the mind something to chase. It gives the heart something to hold. It gives the emptiness a story. That is why some people return to what disturbs them. Not because it is truly good, but because it gives them a familiar emotional rhythm. The waiting, the hoping, the pain, the apology, the brief sweetness, the fear of losing, the promise of change, the collapse, the return. It becomes a cycle, and the cycle feels like life because it is always moving. But movement is not the same as growth. A storm moves too, but it does not become a home. Peace may feel quiet, but quiet does not mean empty. Quiet can be where your nervous system heals. Quiet can be where your intuition becomes clear. Quiet can be where your heart finally tells the truth without being interrupted by fear. Quiet can be where the old cravings lose their power. Quiet can be where you stop confusing noise with meaning. The soul does not need constant intensity to feel alive. Sometimes it needs the safety to stop performing. This is especially important when choosing what to release. If you ask only, "Does this excite me?" you may stay attached to what keeps disturbing you. But if you ask, "Does this bring peace?" the answer may become clearer. The person may excite you, but do they respect your spirit? The dream may excite you, but does it still align with your values? The opportunity may excite you, but does it require you to abandon your health, honesty, or inner life? The connection may excite you, but does your body soften there, or does it prepare for pain? Peace is not the same as comfort. This is important. Sometimes the peaceful choice is uncomfortable because it asks you to grow. Setting a boundary may feel uncomfortable but peaceful underneath. Leaving a familiar situation may feel painful but peaceful underneath. Telling the truth may make your voice shake, but peaceful underneath. Choosing yourself may bring guilt at first, but peaceful underneath. Peace is not always the easiest feeling on the surface. It is the deeper knowing that you are no longer betraying yourself. Excitement often lives on the surface. It rises quickly and can disappear quickly. Peace lives deeper. It may not remove all sadness, but it gives sadness a clean place to move. It may not remove grief, but it does not add confusion to grief. It may not remove fear, but it does not ask you to abandon your truth to escape fear. This is why two choices can both hurt, but only one brings peace. Staying may hurt because you are losing yourself. Leaving may hurt because you are grieving. The pain is not the same. One pain keeps you trapped. The other pain helps you return. Many people mistake peace for a lack of love because they have learned to associate love with emotional disturbance. They think love must feel like longing, fear, proving, chasing, waiting, and uncertainty. They think if they are not anxious, they must not care. But healthy love can be calm. Real alignment can be steady. A peaceful path can be meaningful without being chaotic. Love does not have to make your body afraid in order to be deep. This is where Buddhist wisdom becomes gentle but firm. It teaches that craving is not the same as love. Craving says, I need this to feel complete. Love says, I can care without losing myself. Craving says, I must have this, even if it destroys my peace. Love says, may this be well, but may I also be free. Craving creates urgency. Love creates presence. Craving makes you cling. Love allows you to see clearly. And when you begin to understand this difference, you stop calling every intense attachment sacred. Peace is a stronger sign because it does not depend on possession. You can feel peace even when you release. You can feel peace even when you do not get the outcome you wanted. You can feel peace even when the heart is grieving, because peace is not always happiness. Peace is alignment with truth. It is the quiet dignity that comes when you stop fighting reality. It is the inner stillness that says, this hurts, but I am no longer lying to myself. Excitement can make you bargain with reality. It says, maybe if I try harder, this will become what I want. It says, maybe if I wait longer, the pattern will change. It says, maybe if I ignore the discomfort, the good moments will be enough. Peace does not bargain. Peace sees. Peace accepts. Peace moves with clarity. It does not need to hate what it leaves behind. It simply knows that not everything loved is meant to be carried forward. There is a powerful lesson here for anyone who keeps asking for signs. Often, the sign you want is excitement, because excitement feels like confirmation. A sudden message, a warm memory, an emotional pull, a coincidence, a moment of desire, a rush of hope. These things feel strong, so you think they must be true. But strength of feeling is not always strength of wisdom. A craving can be strong. A fear can be strong. A wound can be strong. A pattern can be strong. The question is not only, is this feeling powerful? The question is this feeling peaceful? When peace becomes your measure, you stop being controlled by every emotional wave. You can feel attraction without surrendering your judgment. You can feel nostalgia without returning to pain. You can feel hope without ignoring reality. You can feel excitement without making it your master. This is emotional freedom, not the absence of feeling, but the ability to let feelings pass through the light of awareness before they become decisions. Buddhist practice often begins with observing the mind. You sit, you breathe, you notice thoughts rise and fall. At first, you may believe every thought. Then you learn to watch them. A thought appears. Maybe I should go back. Another appears. Maybe this is a sign. Another appears. What if I lose everything? But if you stay still, you see that thoughts are movements, not commands. Feelings are weather, not always truth. Excitement may rise, fear may rise, longing may rise. But beneath them, there may be a quiet peace pointing in another direction. This is why stillness is so powerful. Without stillness, excitement can rule you. It pushes you to act quickly. It tells you to send the message, reopen the door, accept the excuse, chase the person, return to the place, say yes before your spirit has spoken. But stillness creates space. In that space you can ask, is this choice coming from peace or from hunger? Is this desire coming from love or fear? Is this excitement opening my life or pulling me back into a cycle I have already outgrown? The more you practice this, the more you realize that peace has a different texture. Peace does not rush you. Peace does not threaten you. Peace does not say, choose me now or lose everything. Peace gives you room to breathe. Even when it asks for courage, it does not create panic. It may be firm, but it is not violent. It may ask you to release, but it does not shame you. It may hurt, but it does not confuse you. That is how you know it is deeper than excitement. Excitement can be mixed with fear, and fear can make something feel more important than it is. When something is uncertain, your mind keeps checking it. When someone is inconsistent, your body waits for the next shift. When a situation is unstable, every small improvement feels powerful. This creates the illusion of depth, but sometimes what feels deep is simply unresolved. What feels magnetic is simply unpredictable. What feels meant to be is simply familiar to your wound. Peace removes that distortion. It lets you see whether something has real roots or only emotional sparks. Sparks can light a fire for a moment, but roots hold life through seasons. A peaceful connection may not constantly shock your system, but it nourishes you. A peaceful path may not always give you a rush, but it strengthens your character. A peaceful decision may not impress everyone, but it lets you sleep. And sometimes, being able to sleep with a clear heart is worth more than every dramatic high you once chased. There is a reason many people sabotage peace. Peace can feel exposing. When there is no drama to manage, you may have to face yourself. When there is no one to chase, you may have to feel your loneliness. When there is no chaos to solve, you may have to confront the emptiness you are covering. Excitement distracts. Peace reveals. This is why peace is stronger. It does not only comfort you, it shows you who you are when you are no longer fighting for what hurts. And at first that can be uncomfortable. You may choose peace and suddenly feel restless. You may leave chaos and suddenly miss the intensity. You may find yourself wanting to return, not because the past was healthy, but because the quiet feels unfamiliar. This is the moment to be gentle with yourself. Do not judge the craving. Watch it. Let it rise and pass. Say to yourself, "This is my old pattern, asking to be fed." You do not have to obey it. You do not have to hate it. You only have to see it clearly. Buddhist wisdom calls us back to non-attachment, but non-attachment does not mean you feel nothing. It means you stop being owned by what you feel. You may feel excitement, but you do not let it carry you into suffering. You may feel longing, but you do not turn longing into proof. You may feel sadness, but you do not use sadness as a reason to betray your clarity. You may feel fear, but you do not let fear choose your whole life. This is how peace becomes stronger than excitement. It gives you the ability to remain free inside your own emotions. There is also a deeper kind of excitement that grows from peace. It is not the wild rush of uncertainty. It is the quiet joy of becoming whole. It is the feeling of waking up without dread. It is the relief of not explaining the same wound again. It is the beauty of choosing people, places, and paths that do not require you to shrink. It is the excitement of discovering that calm does not mean life is over. Calm means your life is finally safe enough to be lived with presence. This kind of joy may not come all at once. It may come slowly, a deeper breath, a better night of sleep, a morning where your first thought is not fear, a day where you do not check for signs, a conversation where you do not betray yourself, a moment where you realize you have not cried over the same thing in a while, a small smile that rises without effort. This is peace becoming alive inside you. It may not look dramatic from the outside, but within you, it is a sacred rebuilding. You begin to understand that peace is not boring. Peace is spacious. Peace is the room where your true self can finally return. In chaos, you are always reacting. In peace, you can create. In chaos, you are always decoding. In peace, you can listen. In chaos, you are always bracing. In peace, you can soften. In chaos, you are always trying to earn safety. In peace, safety becomes the ground beneath you. This is why the path of release is not only about leaving what hurts. It is about learning to desire what heals. At first, you may know how to walk away from pain, but still not know how to choose calm. You may recognize what is wrong, but still feel drawn to it. That is normal. Your inner world may need time to learn a new taste. If you have fed on intensity for years, peace may feel plain, but stay with it. Let your soul adjust. Let your body learn that steady does not mean empty. Let your heart discover that love does not have to arrive dressed as anxiety. When you begin to value peace, your standards change quietly. You stop being impressed by words that are not followed by respect. You stop being moved by apologies that do not create repair. You stop being seduced by attention that comes without consistency. You stop calling mystery what is actually emotional unavailability. You stop confusing distance with depth. You stop believing that something must hurt to be important. This does not make you closed. It makes you wise. You can still enjoy beauty. You can still welcome joy. You can still feel excitement. But you no longer let excitement outrank peace. You no longer let a moment of emotional fire convince you to ignore months of inner unrest. You no longer trade your calm for a rush. You begin to ask, after the excitement fades, what remains? Is there respect? Is there truth? Is there steadiness? Is there room for my soul? That question protects you. Because many things can excite you for a moment, but very few things can hold your peace over time. A person can excite you with attention, but do they honor you when things are difficult? An opportunity can excite you with promise, but does it align with your deeper values? A dream can excite you with possibility, but does it require you to abandon your health, your truth, or your spiritual balance? The long-term fruit matters. Buddhist wisdom always brings you back to the fruit. What does this produce in your life? More craving or more freedom? More fear or more clarity? More exhaustion or more peace? And when the fruit is unrest, you do not need more signs. You need honesty. You need the courage to stop glorifying the feeling that keeps pulling you back into suffering. You need to stop saying, "But it feels so strong," and start asking, "But does it feel peaceful?" You need to stop letting intensity become your proof. You need to remember that storms can be powerful too, but nobody builds a home in the middle of one and calls it shelter. The strongest sign is not always the one that makes your heart race. Sometimes the strongest sign is the one that lets your heart rest. It is the choice that does not require you to betray your knowing. It is the connection that does not make you beg for clarity. It is the path that does not make you abandon your values to keep moving. It is the silence that feels clean instead of punishing. It is the space where your body does not prepare for emotional danger. It is the decision that may hurt, but does not make you feel false. Peace is strong because it can survive reality. Excitement often needs fantasy. Excitement may depend on what you hope someone becomes. Peace looks at what is. Excitement may depend on the story you created. Peace listens to the truth beneath the story. Excitement may rise from what you want. Peace rises from what aligns. And what aligns may not always be what your attachment prefers. There may be a part of you that still wants the thrilling thing, the uncertain thing, the thing that gives you emotional highs and lows. Do not hate that part. It is the part of you that learned to confuse intensity with importance. Teach it gently. Show it that peace is not punishment. Show it that calm is not rejection. Show it that stability is not the absence of love. Show it that a quiet life can still be deep, beautiful, meaningful, and alive. Buddhist wisdom does not remove the human heart. It purifies the way the heart sees. It helps you love without clinging, desire without becoming enslaved, feel without losing awareness, and release without needing hatred. It teaches you that peace is not the end of passion. Peace is the ground where love can become clean. Without peace, love becomes possession. Desire becomes craving. Hope becomes denial. Patience becomes self-abandonment. But with peace, love becomes generous. Desire becomes wise. Hope becomes balanced. Patience becomes dignified. This is why peace must become your strongest sign. Not because life will always be calm, but because inner peace tells you when you are in right relationship with yourself. Even during difficulty, there can be peace if truth is present. Even during grief, there can be peace if you are no longer lying to your soul. Even during change, there can be peace if you are moving with awareness. Peace does not mean everything is perfect. It means you are not betraying yourself to keep something imperfect alive. And when you understand this, you stop chasing the signs that only excite the wounded part of you. You stop needing drama to prove meaning. You stop needing longing to prove love. You stop needing fear to prove importance. You begin to see that what is truly for your spirit will not constantly pull you away from yourself. It may challenge you, but it will not destroy your center. It may stretch you, but it will not steal your breath. It may ask for courage, but it will not demand self-abandonment. So, when something excites you, pause. Do not reject it immediately. Do not follow it blindly. Breathe. Look deeper. Ask what kind of excitement it is. Is it the joy of alignment or the rush of uncertainty? Is it the warmth of real connection or the heat of craving? Is it the opening of your spirit or the activation of an old wound? Is it leading you toward peace or only giving you a temporary escape from emptiness? These questions are not meant to make you fearful. They are meant to make you free. Because the person who can pause before intensity becomes action is no longer controlled by craving. The person who can listen for peace beneath excitement has begun to awaken. The person who can choose calm after years of chaos has already broken a powerful chain. You do not need to chase what shakes you to feel alive. You do not need to stay with what confuses you to prove you are loyal. You do not need to keep returning to emotional storms because quietness feels strange. You do not need to mistake the rush of uncertainty for the voice of destiny. Sometimes the thing you are meant to choose is not the thing that gives you the loudest feeling. Sometimes it is the thing that allows your soul to stop defending itself. And maybe this is the sign you have been avoiding. The peaceful thing did not feel dramatic enough, so you ignored it. The calm answer did not give you the rush you wanted, so you doubted it. The quiet knowing did not entertain your fear, so you searched for something louder. But wisdom rarely competes with chaos. It waits. It waits for you to become tired of the storm. It waits for you to stop calling unrest passion. It waits for you to finally understand that the deepest truth does not always arrive as excitement. Sometimes it arrives as relief. Relief that you no longer have to force. Relief that you no longer have to chase. Relief that you no longer have to translate mixed signals into hope. Relief that you no longer have to become smaller to keep something close. Relief that you can choose a life where your peace is not treated as a luxury, but as a guide. And when peace becomes your guide, release becomes clearer. You stop asking, what feels intense, and start asking, what feels true? You stop asking, what keeps pulling me, and start asking, what helps me return to myself? You stop asking, what do I fear losing, and start asking, what am I losing by holding on? That final question opens the door to the next truth. Because once you see peace as the stronger sign, you also begin to recognize the quiet violence of forcing what no longer flows. You begin to see how much energy is lost trying to push life, love, people, and dreams back into a shape they have already outgrown. And you begin to understand that what must be forced is often no longer aligned with peace. And once peace becomes your guide, you begin to notice something you may have ignored for a long time. You begin to see how much of your life has been spent pushing, pulling, explaining, repairing, waiting, proving, carrying, and trying to make something flow that no longer moves naturally. You begin to see that not every struggle is sacred, not every resistance is a test, not every closed door is asking you to knock harder. Sometimes the lack of flow is not punishment, it is protection. There is a pain that does not shout, it does not break everything in one moment, it does not always look dramatic from the outside. It appears quietly in the way you keep forcing conversations that no longer feel honest, forcing connections that no longer feel safe, forcing dreams that no longer fit your spirit, forcing yourself to stay where your peace keeps leaving. And because the violence is quiet, you may not notice the damage until you realize you are no longer living. You are managing. Forcing what no longer flows is one of the most hidden forms of suffering. It can look like effort, it can look like devotion, it can look like discipline, it can look like love. But beneath it, something inside you is being pushed against its own truth. You feel it in the tiredness that does not leave after rest. You feel it in the way joy becomes heavy. You feel it in the way your heart no longer opens naturally, but only performs what it used to feel. You feel it when you keep trying to revive what your soul has already begun to release. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering grows when we resist reality, not because reality is always pleasant, but because fighting what is true creates a second pain. The first pain is that something has changed. The second pain is that you refuse to accept it. The first pain is that the flow is gone. The second pain is that you keep pushing the river with your hands, hoping your effort will make it move backward. And the more you push, the more exhausted you become. There are seasons when effort is beautiful. There are times when commitment requires patience, when healing requires work, when love requires humility, when a path requires discipline. But there is a difference between working with life and forcing life. When something still has flow, effort feels alive. It may be hard, but it does not make you feel spiritually trapped. It may ask for strength, but it does not demand the loss of your inner dignity. It may stretch you, but it does not keep crushing your peace. Forcing feels different. Forcing feels like dragging something that has stopped walking with you. It feels like begging for movement from what keeps resisting. It feels like pouring your energy into a place that no longer gives anything back. It feels like holding a door open while the wind keeps trying to close it. It feels like convincing yourself that pain is proof of depth, when really, pain may be telling you that the flow has ended. This is why peace matters. Peace helps you know when your effort is aligned and when it has become violence against yourself. If you are working towards something that is truly aligned, there may be tired days, but there is still meaning. There may be obstacles, but there is still movement. There may be fear, but there is still some deep yes beneath the fear. But when you are forcing what no longer flows, your effort becomes dry. You do everything, but nothing feels alive. You keep showing up, but something sacred in you has stopped arriving. Many people remain loyal to the form long after the spirit has left. They keep the relationship, but the connection is gone. They keep the routine, but the purpose is gone. They keep the role, but the joy is gone. They keep the dream, but the soul has outgrown it. They keep the promise, but the truth has changed. And because they fear being seen as inconsistent, ungrateful, weak, selfish, or wrong, they keep forcing the old shape to hold a life that no longer belongs inside it. But Buddhist wisdom understands impermanence. Nothing stays the same forever. What once nourished you may later drain you. What once opened you may later limit you. What once felt like home may later become a place where your spirit cannot breathe. This does not mean the past was fake. It means life moved, you moved, the season moved. And wisdom is learning not to punish yourself for changing. Forcing what no longer flows often comes from the fear of admitting that something has ended. Endings can feel like failure when you believe that every meaningful thing must last forever, but not everything that ends has failed. Some things complete their purpose. Some people teach you something and then become a place of pain. Some dreams carry you through one season, then must be released so another version of you can rise. Some doors are not closing against you. They are closing because your soul is no longer meant to live in that room. The mind does not like this. The mind wants permanent certainty. It wants to say, if it was right once, it must be right forever. It wants to say, if I loved it deeply, I must keep it. It wants to say, if I invested so much, I cannot leave now. But Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us that attachment often uses history to deny reality. It says, remember what this used to be, because it does not want you to see what it has become. And this is where quiet violence begins. You start forcing yourself to feel what you no longer feel. You force yourself to be excited about what now feels heavy. You force yourself to trust where you no longer feel safe. You force yourself to keep caring in the same way, even though your heart has grown tired. You force yourself to return to conversations that only reopen confusion. You force yourself to give chances you do not have the strength to give. And each time you force yourself, you move a little farther away from truth. There is no peace in pretending. Even when the performance looks beautiful, the soul knows when it is lying. You may smile. You may say the right words. You may keep the routine alive. You may tell people everything is fine, but inside something feels pressed down. Something feels unheard. Something feels like it is standing outside your life, waiting for you to come back to yourself. This is why forcing is not always loud. It is not always an argument. It is not always a crisis. Sometimes it is the quiet way you keep saying yes when your whole being says no. It is the way you keep responding when you need silence. It is the way you keep explaining when the pattern has already explained enough. It is the way you keep showing up out of guilt, not love. It is the way you keep trying to make peace with something that keeps taking peace from you. Buddhist wisdom invites you to see the difference between right effort and forced effort. Right effort has mindfulness inside it. It is awake. It is balanced. It does not come from panic, craving, or fear. Right effort helps reduce suffering. It moves you closer to truth. Forced effort comes from grasping. It says, I must make this work, even if it destroys my peace. It says, I must get this outcome, even if I abandon my body's wisdom. It says, I must keep this alive, even if I am the only one breathing into it. When effort becomes grasping, the heart becomes tired. Not ordinary tired, but soul tired. This is the tiredness that sleep does not fully repair. It comes from carrying what was meant to be shared. It comes from pushing what was meant to move naturally. It comes from trying to turn resistance into flow. And the longer you do this, the more you begin to confuse exhaustion with commitment. But commitment does not mean carrying dead weight forever. Commitment does not mean ignoring reality. Commitment does not mean turning your life into a sacrifice for something that no longer holds truth. Real commitment includes awareness. It asks, is there still life here? Is there still respect here? Is there still honesty here? Is there still a shared willingness here? Is there still peace here? If the answer keeps coming back as no, then more force will not create flow. It will only deepen suffering. There is a special kind of grief that comes when you realize your effort cannot save what is no longer aligned. It hurts because effort gives us a sense of control. If you can do more, be more, explain more, wait more, love more, forgive more, then maybe you do not have to face the helplessness of an ending. But sometimes the most painful truth is that more effort is not the medicine. Sometimes more effort becomes the wound. You can pour water into a cracked cup all day, but the cup will not become whole because you are thirsty for it to hold. You can keep trying to revive a connection, but if honesty is missing, your effort becomes emotional labor without roots. You can keep pushing a dream, but if your values have changed, your success may still feel empty. You can keep staying in a place, but if your spirit has already outgrown it, your body will keep carrying the tension of a life that no longer fits. Forcing also creates resentment. At first, you may think you are giving freely, but when you keep giving where nothing flows back, something in you begins to ache. You may become irritated by small things. You may feel unappreciated. You may begin to withdraw emotionally. You may still be present physically, but your heart starts closing quietly. This is not because you are bad. It is because your soul knows you have been giving from an empty place. Resentment is often what happens when truth is delayed for too long. It is the bitterness that grows when you keep doing what your spirit no longer agrees with. It is the anger beneath the smile. It is the pain under the words, "It is fine." It is the tiredness behind the kindness. And if you do not listen, resentment can turn love into obligation, service into burden, and connection into quiet anger. This is why release is sometimes an act of mercy, not only for you, but for what you are releasing. When you keep forcing something, you do not allow it to be what it is. You demand that it become what you need. You hold it in a shape it may no longer be able to carry. You keep asking it to give peace, meaning, love, or purpose that it cannot give. And in doing so, you create suffering on both sides. Letting go can be the first honest thing that has happened in a long time. There are relationships that become more painful because both people are trying to force an old version of love to remain. They remember who they used to be together, and they keep trying to return there. But the people have changed. The needs have changed. The wounds have changed. The silence has changed. The trust has changed. And instead of facing this truth, they keep acting out the old roles. One keeps chasing. One keeps withdrawing. One keeps explaining. One keeps avoiding. The pattern continues, but the flow is gone. There are also dreams that become painful because you are trying to force an old version of yourself to keep wanting them. Maybe you once prayed for something. Maybe you worked hard for it. Maybe it gave you identity. But now when you touch it, something feels heavy. You may feel guilty for no longer wanting what you once begged life to give you. But growth often changes your desires. The person who wanted that dream may not be the person you are becoming. You do not have to stay loyal to a dream just because your past self chose it. This is difficult because people often build their sense of worth around consistency. They think changing direction means they were wrong. But Buddhist wisdom does not treat change as shameful. It sees change as part of life. The flower does not apologize for no longer being a seed. The river does not apologize for moving. The moon does not apologize for changing shape. Why must you apologize for outgrowing what no longer brings peace? The problem is not that things change. The problem is that attachment wants the changed thing to behave like the old thing. You want the person to feel like they once did. You want the place to comfort you like it once did. You want the path to excite you like it once did. You want the identity to fit you like it once did. But once flow has left, force becomes the tool of attachment. It tries to bring the past back by pressure. And pressure is not the same as life. Life has a rhythm. There are openings and closings, beginnings and endings, expansion and rest, meeting and parting, holding and releasing. When you honor rhythm, you suffer less, not because you never feel pain, but because you stop adding resistance to pain. You stop demanding that every ending become a beginning again. You stop forcing every silence to become a message. You stop dragging every closed chapter into the next page. This does not mean you should give up at the first sign of difficulty. That would not be wisdom. That would be avoidance. Buddhist wisdom is not teaching you to run from all discomfort. It is teaching you to distinguish between a challenge that still carries life and resistance, that keeps asking you to betray yourself. Some things need patience, some things need repair, some things need communication, some things need discipline, but some things need release. The work is learning to know the difference. A challenge that still carries life has openness inside it. There is room for honesty. There is room for mutual effort. There is room for learning. There is room for repair. There is room for both people or both parts of the path to breathe. But what no longer flows feels closed. You may speak, but nothing lands. You may try, but nothing shifts. You may give, but nothing grows. You may wait, but peace does not return. When the door is spiritually closed, force only bruises your hands. The quiet violence of forcing what no longer flows is that it teaches you to become harsh with yourself. You start blaming yourself for not being able to make it work. You ask, what is wrong with me? You ask, why can't I feel the way I used to? You ask, why am I not stronger? You may even shame yourself for wanting peace. But maybe nothing is wrong with you. Maybe something has ended. Maybe something has changed. Maybe your spirit is not failing. Maybe it is refusing to keep pretending. The soul often speaks through withdrawal before the mind understands. You may lose interest. You may feel tired. You may stop reaching. You may feel a calm distance growing inside you. At first, you may judge it. You may think you are becoming cold. But sometimes withdrawal is not coldness. Sometimes it is the soul protecting its remaining energy. Sometimes it is your inner life saying, I cannot keep pouring myself into what does not nourish me. This is where gentleness matters. Do not attack yourself for not being able to force what once mattered. Do not call yourself weak because your spirit is tired. Do not call yourself ungrateful because a past blessing has become a present burden. Sit with the truth. Let it breathe. Let it become clear without rushing to justify it. Some truths need silence before action. Some endings need tenderness before movement. Some releases begin as a whisper before they become a decision. Forcing often grows from fear of emptiness. If you stop pushing, what will remain? If you stop trying, who will you be? If you stop carrying the connection, will anyone still choose you? If you stop chasing the dream, will your life lose meaning? These fears are real, but they are not always truthful. The emptiness that comes after you stop forcing may not be a punishment. It may be space. Space for a new breath. Space for a new self. Space for a quieter life. Space for a truth that could not enter while you were holding the old thing with both hands. Buddhist wisdom teaches that empty space is not always loss. Emptiness can be openness. When the hand releases the stone, it becomes available to receive water. When the room is cleared, light can enter. When the mind stops clinging, wisdom can arise. But attachment fears emptiness because it cannot control what comes next. So it tells you to keep forcing the old flow, even if it has become dry. There is humility in accepting that you cannot force life to obey your attachment. You cannot force someone to be honest. You cannot force love to become safe. You cannot force the past to return. You cannot force your heart to stay open where it has learned to close. You cannot force peace to grow in a place where truth is not welcome. You can only choose whether you will keep participating in your own suffering. This humility is not weakness. It is spiritual maturity. It is the moment you stop playing the role of the one who must control the ending. It is the moment you stop demanding that reality prove your hope right. It is the moment you bow to what is, not because it does not hurt, but because fighting it has hurt you more. That bow is not defeat, it is freedom from the illusion of control. There is a quiet relief that comes when you stop forcing. At first, it may be mixed with grief. You may cry because you finally admit how tired you are. You may feel sadness because you wanted the flow to return. You may feel guilt because you are no longer trying in the same way. But beneath all of that, something soft begins to rise. Relief. The relief of no longer pushing against the truth. The relief of no longer performing certainty. The relief of no longer carrying a story that has become too heavy for your spirit. This relief is sacred. It may not look exciting, it may not look victorious, but it is the body and soul recognizing honesty. It is what happens when you stop tightening your hand around what has been trying to leave. It is what happens when you stop forcing your life to fit an old prayer. It is what happens when you finally allow peace to matter more than appearance. Many people fear what others will think if they stop forcing. They fear the questions. Why did you leave? Why did you change? Why did you stop trying? Why did you let it go? But not everyone deserves the full map of your inner journey. Some people only saw the outside. They did not feel the heaviness in your body. They did not hear the conversations you had with yourself at night. They did not carry the pressure in your chest. They did not know how long you tried before you became quiet. You do not have to prove the absence of flow to people who only respect visible collapse. Your peace does not need a public defense. Sometimes the explanation is simple. It no longer flowed without costing me myself. That is enough. You may not say it to everyone, but you must be able to say it to yourself. And when you can say it without bitterness, you have begun to release with wisdom. There is also a difference between forcing and devotion. Devotion is alive. Devotion is offered from the heart, not extracted from fear. Devotion has warmth. Devotion has choice. Devotion does not require you to become empty in order to keep giving. Forcing has desperation. It feels like if you stop, everything will fall apart. It feels like the whole weight is on you. It feels like love has become labor without rest. Devotion gives because it is connected. Forcing gives because it is terrified. Ask yourself gently, am I devoted or am I desperate? This question can be painful, but it can also be freeing. Desperation often wears the clothes of love. It says, I cannot let this go. It says, I need this to work. It says, I do not know who I am without this. Devotion says, I care deeply, but I will not violate truth. Devotion can stay present without clinging. Desperation grips until the hands bleed. When you stop forcing what no longer flows, you may discover how much energy you were losing. Energy that could have gone into healing. Energy that could have gone into creativity. Energy that could have gone into friendships, rest, prayer, learning, service, and quiet joy. Attachment narrows life. It makes one thing feel like everything. It makes one closed door feel like the whole universe. But when you release, the world slowly becomes wider again. At first, you may not know what to do with the energy that returns. You may feel disoriented without the old struggle. But over time, you begin to live differently. You stop checking for movement where there is none. You stop interpreting resistance as destiny. You stop calling exhaustion a sign of commitment. You stop turning your life into a constant effort to keep what has already lost its peace. You begin to move with what opens, not what only takes. Moving with what opens does not mean life becomes effortless. It means your effort is no longer violent toward your spirit. You may still work hard. You may still face difficulty. You may still practice discipline. But you are not forcing your soul into a false shape. You are not begging what is closed to become open. You are not building a home in emotional resistance. You are walking where there is enough truth to support your steps. This is one reason nature is such a powerful teacher in Buddhist reflection. Nature does not force seasons to stay. Leaves fall when their time has passed. Rivers move around stones instead of arguing with them. The sun sets without fear that it will never rise again. Flowers bloom, fade, and return to the earth. There is a deep wisdom in this rhythm. Nothing clings to a form after its life has moved on, except the human mind when it is afraid. To release force is to rejoin this rhythm. It is to say, I will not push against life in the name of attachment. It is to say, I will work where effort is alive, and I will release where effort has become suffering. It is to say, I will trust that what is truly aligned does not require me to destroy my peace to keep it. This trust may take time, especially if you have been disappointed before. But trust grows each time you honor what is true instead of what is familiar. The hardest part is that forcing sometimes gives a temporary sense of purpose. It keeps you busy, it gives you a mission, it lets you feel needed. But peace asks you to stop making pain your purpose. It asks you to find meaning without needing a crisis to manage. It asks you to live without turning your wounds into assignments. It asks you to discover that your value does not depend on saving what refuses to flow. You are allowed to stop trying when trying becomes self-betrayal. You are allowed to step back when your effort is no longer met with truth. You are allowed to release a dream that no longer fits your soul. You are allowed to outgrow a version of life you once prayed for. You are allowed to let silence remain silent instead of forcing it to become an answer. You are allowed to stop knocking on a door that only bruises your spirit. This permission may feel strange because you have been taught to earn release through suffering. You think you must be completely broken before you can leave. You think you must have a dramatic reason. You think the pain must be obvious enough for others to understand. But Buddhist wisdom is more subtle than that. It honors the quiet knowing. It honors the repeated absence of peace. It honors the small inner voice that says, this is no longer the way. When you force what no longer flows, you delay the wisdom that comes from acceptance. Acceptance does not mean you like what happened. It does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean the loss is easy. Acceptance means you stop arguing with the nature of things. If something is not moving, you stop dragging it. If something is closed, you stop bleeding against it. If something is gone, you stop living as if your denial can bring it back. Acceptance is not giving up on life. It is giving up the fight against truth. And once you accept, your energy changes. You are no longer using your strength to preserve an illusion. You are using it to rebuild your peace. You are no longer asking, how can I make this flow again? You are asking, where is life naturally calling me now? You are no longer chasing the old movement. You are listening for the new one. This is where release becomes more than an ending. It becomes a doorway. But before that doorway opens, you may need to grieve. Grieve the effort. Grieve the hope. Grieve the version of yourself who tried so hard. Grieve the years spent pushing. Grieve the good moments that made leaving difficult. Grieve the future you imagined. Do not rush this. Grief is not proof that release is wrong. Grief is the heart honoring what mattered. You can grieve deeply and still know that forcing was hurting you. The more honest you become, the more you understand that flow cannot be commanded. Love cannot be forced. Peace cannot be demanded from what keeps disturbing you. Growth cannot be dragged from someone who refuses to awaken. Purpose cannot be squeezed from a path your soul has outgrown. What flows, flows with life. What must be forced may need to be questioned, and what repeatedly costs you peace may need to be released. This does not make you passive. It makes you wise. You still act. You still choose. You still show up for what matters, but you no longer confuse struggle with alignment. You no longer worship difficulty as proof of destiny. You no longer think every resistance is a spiritual test. Sometimes resistance is information. Sometimes the closed door is honest. Sometimes the lack of flow is the answer you are too attached to receive. So pause before you push harder. Pause before you send another message, offer another explanation, give another chance, force another feeling, or return to another place that keeps draining you. Ask yourself, is there life here, or only my fear of letting go? Is there movement here, or only my effort? Is there peace here, or only my attachment trying to survive? The answer may arrive quietly, but do not dismiss it because it is quiet. You do not need to force what is meant to flow with you. You may need to nurture it, protect it, work with it, and be patient with it, but you will not have to keep violating your own peace to prove its worth. What is aligned will not always be easy, but it will not require you to become a stranger to yourself. What is true will not always be comfortable, but it will not keep asking you to live in inner conflict. What is peaceful will not always be exciting, but it will give your soul room to breathe. And if something no longer flows, let yourself admit it, not with rage, not with shame, not with a need to destroy the past, just with honesty. This once mattered, but it no longer brings peace. This once opened me, but now it closes me. This once felt alive, but now I am the only one forcing movement. These words may hurt, but they also free you from pretending. The quiet violence ends when honesty begins. The pushing softens, the grip loosens, the breath deepens, the heart stops performing. And though the release may ache, something inside you knows you have stopped fighting your own life. You have stopped turning love into pressure. You have stopped turning hope into a chain. You have stopped forcing a river that was never meant to run backward. And once you stop forcing what no longer flows, another truth reveals itself. You begin to see that much of what you called hope was not always hope. Sometimes hope was attachment wearing a gentle face. Sometimes hope was fear refusing to grieve. Sometimes hope was the mind's way of keeping you tied to what your peace had already released. And once you stop forcing what no longer flows, you begin to notice something even more subtle. You begin to see that the hand holding you back was not always fear in its obvious form. Sometimes it came dressed as hope. It sounded gentle. It sounded spiritual. It sounded patient. It told you to believe a little longer, wait a little longer, give another chance, keep the door open, keep the dream alive, keep praying for what your peace had already released. And because hope seems beautiful, you did not question it. But there is a kind of hope that heals, and there is a kind of hope that keeps a wound open. There is a hope that gives strength to the soul, and there is a hope that gives attachment a softer name. The painful truth is that many people do not stay because they truly believe in peace. They stay because they cannot bear the grief of accepting that peace may never come from the place they are still holding. Hope can be holy, but it can also become a hiding place. It can lift the heart, but it can also delay honesty. It can help a person endure a difficult season, but it can also trap a person inside a painful cycle by making them believe that leaving means they have stopped believing. This is why Buddhist wisdom asks us to look not only at what we feel, but at what our feeling is producing. Does this hope make you clearer, kinder, steadier, and more awake? Or does it make you anxious, dependent, blind, and unable to accept what is already in front of you? Attachment does not always look desperate. Sometimes it looks calm on the outside. It says, I still have faith. It says, I believe things will change. It says, I am not ready to give up. It says, maybe this is just a test. And sometimes those words are true. But sometimes underneath them there is not faith. There is fear. Fear of emptiness. Fear of starting again. Fear of being wrong. Fear of losing the story you built. Fear of admitting that what you kept calling hope was really your heart refusing to grieve. This is where many people suffer quietly. They are not clinging to what is actually happening. They are clinging to what they wish would happen. They are not in love with the reality of the situation. They are in love with its possibility. They are not staying because the present gives peace. They are staying because the future in their mind still looks beautiful. And the future can become a very convincing prison when the present is too painful to accept. Buddhist wisdom teaches that craving creates suffering because craving argues with what is. It says, this must become what I want. It says, this must give me what I need. It says, this must not end because I am not ready. Hope becomes attachment when it stops being a light in the heart and becomes a demand placed on life. It no longer says, may things unfold with wisdom. It says, this must unfold the way I want, or I cannot be at peace. That is not hope anymore. That is bargaining. And bargaining can keep you trapped for years. You bargain with the past. You bargain with someone's potential. You bargain with your own pain. You say, if I wait a little longer, maybe I will finally receive what I have needed all along. You say, if I love better, maybe they will soften. You say, if I become more understanding, maybe this will stop hurting. You say, if I keep believing, maybe the universe will reward my endurance. But wisdom asks, is your belief bringing you closer to freedom, or is it making you loyal to suffering? This question may hurt because it touches the part of you that wanted your patience to mean something. You wanted your waiting to be rewarded. You wanted your tears to lead to a beautiful ending. You wanted your loyalty to become the reason everything changed, and there is nothing foolish about wanting that. The heart longs for meaning. The heart wants to believe that love given deeply will return as peace. But life does not always follow the story the heart writes when it is wounded. Sometimes you can love deeply and still not be met. Sometimes you can give sincerely and still not be valued. Sometimes you can believe in someone's goodness and still need to accept that their unhealed patterns are not safe for you. Sometimes you can pray, wait, forgive, and hope, yet the answer is still release. This does not mean hope was wrong. It means hope must bow when truth becomes clear. Healthy hope has humility. It leaves space for life to answer differently. It says, I desire this, but I will not lose myself if it does not happen. It says, I believe healing is possible, but I will not sacrifice my peace to force it. It says, I can remain open, but I will not remain chained. Attachment disguised as hope has no humility. It grips, it insists, it keeps searching for evidence. It ignores the cost. It makes your peace depend on one outcome. This is one of the clearest ways to know the difference. Healthy hope strengthens your relationship with yourself. False hope weakens it. Healthy hope helps you live. False hope makes you pause your life. Healthy hope allows you to keep growing even while you are uncertain. False hope keeps you emotionally stuck, waiting for one person, one apology, one change, one sign, one return, one perfect moment before you can breathe again. Look closely at what your hope is doing to your life. Is it opening your heart or closing your world? Is it helping you become wiser or keeping you in denial? Is it making you patient with life or dependent on a fantasy? Is it allowing you to move with grace, or is it freezing you in a place where nothing is changing except your own exhaustion? Attachment often disguises itself as hope because hope feels noble. It is easier to say, I still believe, than to say, I am scared to let go. It is easier to say, I am waiting for the right time, than to say, I do not know who I will be without this. It is easier to say, things might change, than to say, I am not ready to face that they may never change. This is why honesty is so sacred. It removes the costume. It lets you see what is really happening inside you. And when you see clearly, you may realize that your hope has been feeding on rare moments, not real patterns. A small kindness becomes proof. A warm message becomes a promise. A memory becomes a prophecy. A temporary improvement becomes a reason to forget the long history of unrest. You begin to build a whole future out of fragments, but fragments cannot hold the weight of your peace. A small moment of sweetness does not erase a pattern that keeps disturbing your soul. This does not mean the sweet moments were fake. They may have been real. That is what makes release so hard. If everything were bad, letting go would be easy. But attachment often survives on the mixture. A little pain, a little hope, a little distance, a little closeness, a little confusion, a little tenderness. The heart keeps returning because it remembers the tenderness. But Buddhist wisdom asks you to look at the whole field, not just the flower. Is the soil nourishing you, or are you surviving on the sight of one bloom in a field that keeps cutting your feet? False hope teaches you to overvalue exceptions and undervalue patterns. It says, "But they can be so kind." It says, "But there were beautiful days." It says, "But I saw their good side." Yes, and all of that may be true. But peace is not built from exceptions. Peace is built from what is consistent enough to rest in. You cannot build a home in someone's rare good moments if the rest of the space keeps making your spirit unsafe. Hope becomes dangerous when it asks you to ignore repeated truth. Buddhist wisdom is not against believing in change. It simply asks for awareness. Is there responsibility? Is there humility? Is there real repair? Is there steady movement? Is there willingness from more than one side? Or is your hope doing all the work while reality remains the same? If only your imagination is changing but the pattern is not, then what you are holding may not be hope. It may be attachment trying to survive through fantasy. Fantasy is powerful because it gives pain a future. It says one day this will make sense. It says one day they will understand. It says one day I will be chosen properly. It says one day this will become peaceful. And sometimes one day does come. But if your one day keeps asking you to abandon every today, you must ask what kind of future you are buying with your present life. Your life is not only the dream you are waiting for. Your life is this breath, this body, this mind, this day, this season. If hope makes you absent from the life you are living now, then it is no longer helping you. It is keeping you suspended between what was and what might be, while the present quietly passes without your full presence. Buddhist wisdom brings us back to the present because attachment lives in imagined time. It clings to the past through memory and reaches into the future through craving. The present is where truth is most visible. What is happening now? How are you being treated now? How does this path feel now? What is this costing you now? Not what could happen after a miracle, not what happened in the beginning, not what they promised when emotions were high. Now. The present moment may not give you the answer your attachment wants, but it gives the answer your peace needs. False hope also feeds on identity. You may have become the person who never gives up, the person who believes in love, the person who stays, the person who sees the best in others, the person who keeps faith. These are beautiful qualities when guided by wisdom, but when they become identity, they can trap you. You may keep holding on, not because holding on is peaceful, but because letting go would challenge the image you have of yourself. You may fear that if you release, you are no longer loyal, no longer spiritual, no longer loving, no longer strong. But strength is not measured by how long you can hold what is burning you. Loyalty is not proven by how much of yourself you lose. Love is not made pure by suffering. And spirituality is not the refusal to accept an ending. Sometimes the most spiritual act is to stop turning your pain into proof of devotion. There is a difference between faith and refusal. Faith trusts life beyond your control. Refusal demands that life obey your attachment. Faith says, even if this does not become what I wanted, I will still be guided. Refusal says, if this does not become what I wanted, I cannot move. Faith opens the hand. Refusal tightens it. Faith can grieve and still walk. Refusal stays frozen because it believes release means defeat. Attachment loves to call itself faith because faith sounds sacred. But true faith does not make you dependent on one outcome. True faith does not require you to remain in suffering to prove belief. True faith trusts that peace can meet you beyond the thing you are afraid to lose. It trusts that your life is larger than one person's choice, one closed door, one failed dream, one ending, one disappointment. Attachment says, "Without this, I have nothing." Faith says, "Even after this, life can still hold me." This is why release is not hopelessness. Many people fear that letting go means they have no hope left, but release can be a deeper form of hope. It means you have stopped hoping for pain to become peace and started hoping for a life where peace is possible. You have stopped hoping someone else will become the source of your freedom and started hoping your own courage will open the way. You have stopped hoping the old thing will change and started making room for what is aligned with who you are becoming. That is not giving up. That is redirecting hope toward truth. There are times when the heart must say, "I no longer hope for this to become what I wanted. I now hope to heal from wanting it so badly." That sentence can break something open. It is not bitterness. It is honesty. It is the moment hope stops serving attachment and starts serving liberation. You are no longer feeding the dream that keeps you stuck. You are feeding the awakening that brings you home. Buddhist wisdom teaches that clinging causes suffering because clinging makes the mind narrow. It places all meaning in one thing, one person, one outcome, one apology, one future, one return. And when life does not give that one thing, the mind feels destroyed. But when awareness expands, you begin to see that no single outcome deserves the power to take your whole peace. You may grieve, yes. You may feel pain, yes. But you are not empty. You are not finished. You are not abandoned by life because one attachment could not become a home. False hope often says, "Wait until you feel ready." But readiness may never come while attachment is still feeding you reasons to stay. You may not feel ready to release. You may only feel tired enough to stop lying. And that can be enough. Sometimes release begins before the heart feels brave. It begins with one honest thought. This hope is hurting me. Not because hope itself is wrong, but because this particular hope has become a chain. When hope becomes a chain, you stop living honestly. You filter everything through the outcome you want. You avoid people who tell you the truth. You get angry at signs that point toward release. You cling to advice that helps you stay. You call your fear intuition. You call your craving destiny. You call your waiting wisdom. But deep down, something in you knows the difference. It knows when hope feels clean and when hope feels like panic dressed in soft clothing. Clean hope has spaciousness. You can breathe inside it. You can still take care of yourself. You can still make wise decisions. You can still accept reality as it unfolds. But anxious hope is tight. It makes you check, compare, analyze, and wait for tiny signs of movement. It makes your mood depend on outside signals. It makes you feel powerful for a moment, then helpless again. It does not give you peace. It gives you temporary relief from the fear of loss. And relief can be addictive. Every small sign of possibility gives the mind another reason to keep holding. But the relief fades, and soon you need another sign, another promise, another moment of attention, another reason to believe. This cycle is not peace. It is emotional dependence on uncertainty. The heart becomes hungry for proof, and hope becomes the food that never truly satisfies. To break this cycle, you must become willing to ask a frightening question. What if nothing changes? Not as a curse, not as negativity, not as punishment, but as clarity. What if the pattern remains? What if the apology never comes? What if the person never becomes ready? What if the dream no longer fits? What if the door stays closed? What if the peace you are waiting for will only come after you stop waiting? This question does not destroy true hope. It destroys illusion. True hope can survive reality. False hope depends on avoiding it. If asking, "What if nothing changes?" makes everything inside you collapse, it may be because your peace was attached to a future that has not arrived. But when you sit with the question long enough, another strength begins to rise. You begin to realize that even if nothing changes outside you, something can change within you. You can stop giving your life to the waiting. You can stop postponing your breath. You can stop making your freedom depend on someone else's awakening. This is where Buddhist wisdom becomes deeply freeing. It does not ask you to control what you cannot control. It asks you to return to what is yours. Your awareness, your conduct, your boundaries, your truth, your compassion, your willingness to release craving, your courage to choose peace even when the outcome you wanted does not come. The moment you return to what is yours, attachment loses some of its power. You may still care. Caring may remain, love may remain, memory may remain, but the grip begins to loosen. You stop demanding that caring must lead to staying. You stop believing that love must equal waiting. You stop confusing compassion with emotional imprisonment. You begin to understand that you can bless what you release. You can wish it well without walking beside it. You can hope for someone's healing without making their healing the condition for your peace. This is a mature hope, a hope without chains, a hope that says, "May they grow, but I do not need to be harmed while waiting for it." A hope that says, "May life unfold beautifully, but I will not keep forcing one closed path." A hope that says, "May what is meant for me meet me in peace, not in constant disturbance." A hope that is no longer attached to controlling the form, but open to receiving truth. The heart may resist this at first. It may say, "But if I stop hoping for this, then everything I gave was for nothing." But that is not true. What you gave taught you something. It showed you your capacity to love. It showed you where your wounds still ask to be healed. It showed you how easily compassion can become self-abandonment when it is not balanced with wisdom. It showed you the difference between desire and peace. It showed you where you must return to yourself. Nothing is wasted when it becomes awareness. The danger is not that you hoped. The danger is staying loyal to a hope after it has become harmful. There is no shame in believing. There is no shame in waiting for a while. There is no shame in seeing the good. The shame is not yours. But now that you see more clearly, you are being invited into a higher honesty. You are being asked to stop giving sacred language to what keeps you bound. You are being asked to call attachment by its true name, not to condemn yourself, but to free yourself. Freedom begins when you can say, "I wanted this deeply," but wanting it does not make it peaceful. It begins when you can say, "I hoped for change, but I cannot keep living inside the absence of it." It begins when you can say, "I can love the possibility, but I must respond to the reality." It begins when you can say, "My hope is no longer allowed to cost me my soul." These words may feel heavy, but they are also clean. They remove confusion. They return power to your hands. They help you stop waiting for the future to rescue you from the present. And once you stop waiting in that painful way, you may feel grief, but you will also feel space. Space to heal, space to breathe, space to ask what your life wants now, not what your attachment wants back. The more you loosen false hope, the more you begin to notice real hope returning. Real hope may not be attached to the old outcome. It may be quieter. It may look like getting through one day without checking. It may look like choosing rest instead of rumination. It may look like forgiving yourself for staying too long. It may look like feeling your sadness without turning it into a reason to return. It may look like believing that peace can still find you in a form you have not yet pictured. That kind of hope is healing. It does not trap you in the past or chain you to a fantasy. It walks with you into the unknown. It does not promise that you will get exactly what you lost. It promises that you can become whole without it. It does not say, hold on to what hurts. It says, hold on to your awakening. It does not say, wait for them to become peace. It says, let peace begin in you. This is the hope Buddhist wisdom points toward. Not hope that denies suffering, but hope that understands suffering can become a doorway to freedom when you stop clinging. Not hope that depends on control, but hope that trusts the path of awareness. Not hope that keeps you begging for signs, but hope that helps you listen to the deepest sign of all, the presence or absence of peace. And now you can see why attachment wears hope so often. Hope is softer than fear, so the mind uses it to stay attached without feeling ashamed. But once awareness enters, the disguise begins to fall. You start to feel the difference between what opens you and what binds you. You start to know when hope gives you strength and when it only helps you postpone grief. You start to understand that not every hopeful thought deserves your obedience. So, if you are still hoping, do not attack yourself. Sit with the hope. Hold it gently. Ask it what it is protecting. Is it protecting love, or is it protecting fear? Is it rooted in truth, or rooted in refusal? Is it helping you live, or helping you wait? Is it connected to peace, or connected to panic? Let the answer rise slowly. You do not have to force it. Truth does not need violence. It only needs space. And when you finally see that a hope has become attachment, do not curse it. Thank it for trying to protect you from the pain of loss. Thank it for keeping you alive when you did not yet know how to let go. Thank it for showing you what you wanted. Then place it down. You do not have to carry every hope forever. Some hopes are meant to guide you for a season, then be released when they begin to cost more than they give. You do not need more signs to prove that something is no longer peaceful. You need the courage to stop hiding inside hope when truth has already arrived. You need the courage to stop calling fear faith. You need the courage to let the future you imagined dissolve, so the life that is actually waiting for you can begin to breathe. Because sometimes hope is not the voice telling you to stay. Sometimes hope is the quiet strength that helps you leave. Sometimes hope is not believing they will change. Sometimes hope is believing you can heal even if they do not. Sometimes hope is not keeping the old door open. Sometimes hope is trusting that peace will meet you after you finally stop standing in front of what keeps closing. And once this becomes clear, you begin to understand the next painful pattern. You see why you keep asking for signs, even after the answer has already hurt you. You see that the question is not always about clarity. Sometimes it is about the heart trying to delay the grief of accepting what the pain has already revealed. And once you understand that attachment can dress itself as hope, you begin to see why the search for signs becomes so painful. You are not always asking because there is no answer. Sometimes you are asking because the answer has already touched a place you were not ready to face. The pain has spoken, the pattern has spoken, the absence of peace has spoken, but the heart, still holding the dream, keeps looking upward, outward, anywhere, hoping something will disagree with what it already knows. There is a quiet heartbreak in asking for signs after the answer has already hurt you. It is the heartbreak of knowing, but not wanting to know. It is the pain of standing before truth and still wishing it would change its face. You are not blind. You are grieving before you have admitted there is something to grieve. This is why people keep asking, not because they are foolish, not because they are weak, not because they cannot see. They ask because acceptance has a price, and that price is often grief. To accept the answer means to stop negotiating with the wound. It means to stop waiting for the situation to become gentle enough to justify your patience. It means to stop believing that one more sign will turn pain into peace. It means admitting that something you loved, trusted, wanted, or prayed for has become a place where your spirit cannot rest. And that kind of truth is heavy. So the mind creates a delay. It says, maybe I need another sign. It says, maybe I misunderstood. It says, maybe the pain is teaching me something. It says, maybe this is a test of my faith. It says, maybe if I wait a little longer, the answer will feel less painful. But often the mind is not looking for truth anymore. It is looking for relief from the truth. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering grows when we cling to what is changing, fading, or already showing us its nature. The suffering is not only in the situation itself. It is in the argument we keep having with reality. Reality says, this hurts. Attachment says, but maybe it will stop. Reality says, this drains you. Attachment says, but maybe it has a deeper meaning. Reality says, you are not at peace here. Attachment says, but maybe peace will come after I suffer enough. This inner argument becomes exhausting because part of you is trying to awaken, while another part is trying to keep the dream alive. The answer has already hurt you because deep down you know what it requires. It requires release. It requires a decision. It requires the courage to stop participating in your own confusion. And when an answer demands action, the mind often asks for more signs so it can delay responsibility. As long as you are still searching, you do not have to move. As long as you keep saying, I am waiting for confirmation, you do not have to face the empty space that comes after letting go. But waiting for signs can become a spiritual-looking form of avoidance. You may call it patience, you may call it surrender, you may call it faith. But if it keeps you returning to the same pain, it may not be wisdom. True surrender does not keep you trapped in what is harming your peace. True surrender opens your hands. It says, I do not need to force the answer to become what I prefer. Avoidance keeps checking the same wound and hoping it will become a doorway. There is a reason the heart asks again and again. Pain is not always enough to make a person leave because pain can become familiar. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar freedom. You know the rhythm of the old suffering. You know when the silence comes. You know when the apology arrives. You know how long the hope usually lasts before disappointment returns. You know how to survive it. But freedom is unknown. Freedom asks you to become someone who no longer organizes their life around waiting. That unknown can feel more frightening than the pain you already understand. So you ask for signs because signs feel like protection. If a sign tells you to stay, you can avoid the grief of leaving. If a sign tells you to leave, you can avoid the guilt of choosing yourself. You want the universe, another person, a dream, a coincidence, or a dramatic event to make the decision so clear that you do not feel responsible for it. But wisdom does not always remove responsibility. Sometimes wisdom asks you to stand inside your knowing and choose. This is difficult because many people were never taught to trust their own inner clarity. They were taught to doubt themselves, explain themselves, soften their truth, and wait until pain became visible enough for others to approve of their decision. So when peace leaves, they do not trust that as enough. When their body tightens, they do not trust that as enough. When their joy fades, they do not trust that as enough. They keep asking for something louder because they were taught that their quiet suffering does not count. But your suffering does not need to become dramatic before it becomes valid. Your peace does not need witnesses before it matters. Your exhaustion does not need to be explained perfectly before it deserves compassion. Sometimes the sign is simply that you have become tired of being the only one trying to make peace happen. Sometimes the sign is that you keep needing signs at all, because what truly nourishes the soul does not usually require constant spiritual investigation to know whether it is harming you. When something is deeply misaligned, the mind often becomes noisy. It keeps analyzing. It keeps replaying. It keeps asking friends, searching for messages, studying small details, trying to make sense of what the body already feels. This mental noise is not always wisdom. Sometimes it is the sound of the mind trying to escape one clear truth. The more the answer hurts, the more questions the mind creates around it. Buddhist mindfulness helps you see this without judgment. It teaches you to watch the mind instead of obeying every thought it produces. A thought comes, maybe I should wait. Another thought comes, maybe this pain means it matters. Another comes, maybe the next sign will be different. Instead of immediately following them, you pause, you breathe, you ask, is this thought bringing me closer to peace, or is it helping me delay grief? That single question can reveal so much. Many people think the mind wants truth, but often the mind wants comfort. Truth may comfort you eventually, but first it may take away what you are using to avoid pain. It may take away the fantasy. It may take away the excuse. It may take away the belief that one more chance will change everything. It may take away the identity of being the one who never gives up. And because the mind senses that truth will remove these things, it keeps asking for more information. But sometimes more information only makes attachment stronger. You do not always need another conversation. You do not always need another explanation. You do not always need another emotional scene. You do not always need to hear the same promise in a different voice. You may think more information will bring peace, but if the pattern has already revealed itself, more information may only give your attachment new material to work with. The heart says, but what if this time is different? And yes, life can change, people can change, situations can improve, healing is possible, but wisdom asks for more than possibility. It asks for reality. Is there steady change or only emotional moments? Is there real accountability or only words that appear when you are finally tired? Is there peace after the conversation or only a short calm before the same confusion returns? Is your hope supported by truth or is it surviving on your fear of letting go? The answer that has hurt you may not be a single event. It may be a pattern. And patterns are painful because they remove the comfort of seeing pain as an accident. Once something happens again and again, the soul begins to understand. This is not confusion. This is information. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a rhythm. This is not one bad day. This is a structure that keeps producing the same suffering. And when you see a pattern clearly, asking for signs can become a way of pretending the pattern has not already spoken. A pattern is one of the clearest signs life gives, not because it is loud, but because it repeats. It says, look again. It says, this is what happens here. It says, do not build your peace on exceptions. But attachment dislikes patterns because patterns are hard to romanticize. It is easier to hold on to a rare, beautiful moment than to accept a repeated, painful truth. It is easier to remember the day they were gentle than to admit how often they are not. It is easier to hold one promise close than to measure the distance between the promise and the practice. Buddhist wisdom asks us to see things as they are, not as craving wants them to be. This does not mean becoming harsh. It means becoming honest. If something has shown you its nature repeatedly, compassion does not require you to stay available to it. You can understand why someone is the way they are. You can wish healing for them. You can pray for their peace. But you do not have to keep placing your heart under the same falling stone and call it hope. The reason you keep asking after the answer hurts is often because you are trying to make the release painless. You want a sign that removes grief. You want clarity so complete that you feel no sadness. You want proof so strong that you never miss what you leave. But that is not how release usually works. You can have clarity and still grieve. You can know something is not peaceful and still miss it. You can choose yourself and still cry. The presence of pain does not always mean the answer is wrong. Sometimes it means the attachment is being loosened. This is a very important truth. Many people return because release hurts. They think, if letting go hurts this much, maybe I should not let go. But pain after release is not always a sign to return. It may be the natural ache of detachment. It may be the body leaving a familiar rhythm. It may be the heart mourning what it wanted the situation to become. It may be the mind adjusting to a life where it no longer has to chase signs. That pain needs compassion, not reversal. When you keep asking for signs, you may also be asking the pain to become meaningful enough to tolerate. You want to believe it is there for a reason. You want to believe the suffering is building something sacred. And sometimes pain does teach. But not all pain is meant to be lived in permanently. Some pain teaches once, and then the lesson becomes the need to leave. If you keep sitting in the same fire after it has taught you that it burns, you are no longer learning from the fire. You are refusing to move away from it. Buddhist wisdom does not glorify suffering for its own sake. It sees suffering as something to understand, not worship. If suffering reveals attachment, learn. If suffering reveals craving, learn. If suffering reveals a false identity, learn. If suffering reveals that something is not peaceful, learn. But once the lesson is clear, staying in the suffering does not make you wiser. It only deepens the wound. This is where many people confuse endurance with enlightenment. They think the more pain they can handle, the more spiritually advanced they are. But awakening is not measured by how much suffering you can tolerate. It is measured by how clearly you can see the causes of suffering and stop feeding them. If the cause is clinging, release. If the cause is denial, tell the truth. If the cause is repeated self-abandonment, return to yourself. If the cause is asking for signs to avoid action, stop asking and listen. The answer has already hurt you because it touched your attachment to the outcome. It showed you that the thing you wanted may not be the thing that brings peace. That is a painful realization. It can feel like the ground moving beneath you. You may feel betrayed by life, by someone else, or even by your own heart. You may wonder why you wanted something so deeply if it was not meant to stay. But desire is not always destiny. Sometimes desire reveals where healing is needed. Sometimes it shows what you value. Sometimes it shows what you have been missing. But it does not always show what you must keep. This is why you can want something and still need to release it. Wanting is not proof of alignment. Missing is not proof of peace. Longing is not proof that you should return. A person can crave what is familiar, even when it is harmful. A heart can miss what once comforted it, even after it became painful. The mind can replay beautiful moments, even when the whole story is no longer safe. So when you ask for signs, be careful that you are not asking longing to make decisions for you. Longing speaks from absence. Wisdom speaks from awareness. Longing says, I miss what I felt. Wisdom says, what was the full cost of staying? Longing says, maybe I should go back. Wisdom says, what made me need to leave inside myself before I ever left outwardly? Longing says, but there were good moments. Wisdom says, were the good moments enough to create peace? This is how you begin to separate the ache of attachment from the clarity of truth. Sometimes the answer hurts because it reveals how long you have been choosing potential over presence. You waited for who someone could become. You waited for what a path might turn into. You waited for the dream to feel alive again. And now the answer says, look at what is here. That can feel cruel, but it is actually compassionate. The present moment is trying to save you from giving more years to an imagined future that has not been meeting you with reality. You may also keep asking for signs because you fear the silence that follows acceptance. While you are still searching, your mind is busy. There is always something to interpret, something to wait for, something to analyze. But when you accept the answer, the noise quiets, and then you are left with yourself. You are left with grief. You are left with the question, what now? That space can feel frightening, but that space is also where healing begins. The silence after acceptance is not empty in the way attachment fears. It is open. It is the place where your own voice can return. It is the place where your nervous system can stop chasing. It is the place where you begin to notice life beyond one painful question. But if you keep asking for signs, you keep filling that space with noise. You keep delaying the meeting with yourself. Buddhist wisdom values silence because silence reveals what noise hides. In silence, you may discover that you are not as confused as you thought. You may discover that your grief is not trying to destroy you. You may discover that your peace has been waiting underneath the fear. You may discover that the answer did not hurt because it was wrong. It hurt because it was true. Truth can hurt and still heal. A medicine can sting and still cleanse. A door closing can ache and still protect. A goodbye can break the heart open and still save the soul from further suffering. This is why you must not judge truth by whether it feels pleasant at first. Some truths feel painful because they are cutting you free from an illusion you loved. The more attached you are, the more painful truth feels. If you are not attached, reality is simply reality. But if you have built identity, hope, security, and meaning around one outcome, reality can feel like an enemy. That is why Buddhist practice focuses so much on non-attachment. Not because you should not love, but because love without awareness becomes captivity. When you are attached, you do not only love something, you believe you cannot be okay without it. And that belief makes every sign feel urgent. You search for signs because you are trying to protect the belief that your peace depends on what you are afraid to release. But what if your peace is on the other side of releasing it? What if the very thing you fear losing is the thing blocking the life that can hold you more gently? What if the answer hurt not because life is against you, but because the part of you that clings is being asked to loosen? This is not easy. Nobody releases deep attachment with a simple thought. It takes tenderness. It takes time. It takes repeated honesty. It takes choosing not to reopen the same wound just because the ache of withdrawal rises. It takes learning to comfort yourself without returning to what created the pain. It takes trusting that grief is not a command to go back. It takes understanding that a sign is not always something new. Sometimes the sign is the pain that keeps repeating when you choose the same thing. When you ask again after the answer has hurt you, pause and ask yourself, what am I hoping this new sign will do? Do you want it to reveal truth, or do you want it to excuse staying? Do you want clarity, or do you want comfort? Do you want wisdom, or do you want delay? Do you want peace, or do you want the old dream to be restored without the work of grief? These questions are not meant to shame you, they are meant to help you see. Seeing is the beginning of release. You may see that you are still attached. You may see that you are afraid. You may see that you are not ready. That is okay. Honesty is already a movement toward freedom. You do not have to pretend to be detached. You do not have to pretend the answer does not hurt. You only have to stop lying to yourself about why you keep asking. There is something deeply human about wanting the painful answer to change. Everyone has done this in some form. People ask for signs after a relationship has shown them its pattern. They ask for signs after a job has drained their spirit. They ask for signs after a friendship has become one-sided. They ask for signs after a dream no longer feels alive. They ask because release feels like death to the version of them that wanted things to work. But the death of an illusion is not the death of your life. It may be the beginning of your return. The version of you that keeps asking for signs is often the version that still hopes the past can be repaired without loss. Be kind to that version. It is scared. It has loved. It has waited. It has invested. It does not want to feel foolish. It does not want to admit that it stayed too long. It does not want to face the emptiness. But kindness does not mean letting that version keep leading you back into suffering. You can hold it gently and still say, "We cannot keep going back to what keeps hurting us." This is where self-compassion becomes necessary. Without self-compassion, clarity turns into self-attack. You may start asking, "Why did I not see it sooner? Why did I keep asking? Why did I ignore the pain?" But Buddhist wisdom does not use awareness as a weapon. It uses awareness as a lamp. The purpose is not to punish the past self, but to guide the present self. You did not know how to release before. Now you are learning. You did not trust your peace before. Now you are listening. You did not recognize false hope before. Now you can name it. The answer may have hurt you, but it also offered you a doorway. It showed you where attachment still had power. It showed you where fear was hiding behind hope. It showed you where you were waiting for permission. It showed you where your peace had been ignored. And if you receive it with awareness, even a painful answer can become a teacher. But the teaching only becomes freedom when you stop asking the same question in different ways. At some point, you must stop asking, "Is this hurting me?" when you already know it is. You must stop asking, "Should I release?" when your peace has already left. You must stop asking, "What does this mean?" when the meaning is that your soul needs care. You must stop asking for signs from the sky while refusing to listen to the life inside your own chest. This does not mean you become rigid. It means you become honest. You can remain open to life without remaining open to harm. You can be flexible without being endlessly available to confusion. You can believe in change without waiting forever in a place that keeps wounding you. You can trust timing without using timing as an excuse to avoid courage. The courage to stop asking is not the courage to know everything. It is the courage to act on enough. Enough pain, enough repetition, enough unrest, enough shrinking, enough nights spent wondering why peace feels so far away. Enough moments where your soul whispered, "This is not it." You may never have total certainty, but you can have enough clarity to stop abandoning yourself. And when you finally stop asking, something surprising happens. The answer becomes quieter, but stronger. You realize it was never hiding. You were just hoping it would be different. You realize your peace was not absent. It was buried under fear. You realize your intuition was not weak. It was ignored. You realize life had been speaking through patterns, through discomfort, through exhaustion, through the relief you felt when you stopped reaching. This realization may bring sadness, but it also brings power. Because now you are no longer at the mercy of every sign. You are no longer waiting for external permission. You are no longer asking the same pain to explain itself one more time. You are beginning to stand inside your own awareness, and that is a sacred place to stand. Buddhist wisdom would call this a movement from delusion toward clear seeing. Delusion says, maybe pain will become peace if I keep holding. Clear seeing says, pain has already shown me where I am clinging. Delusion says, I need another sign. Clear seeing says, the pattern is the sign. Delusion says, if I let go, I lose everything. Clear seeing says, if I keep clinging, I lose myself. And losing yourself is the greatest cost. Not the loss of the person, not the loss of the dream, not the loss of the outcome. The deeper loss is the slow disappearance of your own inner stability while you wait for what keeps hurting you to become holy. That is why the answer hurts. It is showing you that the path you are on is costing more than you were willing to admit. So let the pain of the answer become a bell, not a cage. Let it wake you, not trap you. Let it show you where your hand is still gripping. Let it guide you back to the breath. Let it teach you to stop searching for a sign that gives permission to betray yourself. Let it teach you that peace is not something you beg from what keeps disturbing you. Peace is something you protect by honoring what truth has already made clear. You do not need another sign after the answer has already hurt you. You need stillness. You need honesty. You need compassion for the part of you that wanted the answer to be different. You need courage to stop turning pain into a question. You need enough love for yourself to say, I may not understand everything, but I understand that I cannot keep losing peace here. And when you can say that, you are already closer to freedom. Not because the grief has disappeared, not because the attachment has vanished, not because the future is clear, but because you have stopped asking pain to keep proving itself. You have stopped making your soul testify again and again before you believe it. You have stopped placing your peace on trial. From here, the next truth becomes unavoidable, because every time you keep asking for signs, every time you keep returning to what drains you, every time you negotiate with what has already shown you the absence of peace, there is a cost, not only emotional, not only mental, there is a spiritual cost. And until you understand that cost, you may keep paying for attachment with the very life force that was meant to carry you toward freedom. And maybe this is the quiet truth you were meant to hear today. The sign was never far away. It was in the heaviness you kept explaining, the peace you kept losing, the silence you kept fearing, the confusion that never fully cleared, and the pain that kept returning every time you tried to force what no longer flowed. You do not need more signs when your body has already spoken. You do not need more proof when your peace has already left. You do not need to keep calling attachment hope, endurance patience, or suffering love. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that freedom begins when we stop clinging to what keeps disturbing the mind. Sometimes letting go is not giving up. Sometimes it is the first honest act of deep self-respect. Release will not always feel easy. It may ask you to grieve the version you wanted, disappoint the people who depended on your weakness, and stop returning after clarity has already arrived. But every step away from what is not at peace is a step back toward your own soul. Peace is not found by forcing pain to become gentle.